The same, since while there are elements of the movie that I do truly love, I've also come to notice more flaws as well. And so those elements kind of
greetings,
balance
soldier.
each other out.
Welcome to
But
my humble
something
shop.
always
Please,
told
take a
me
look at my
deep
interest
down
here.
that this
And
movie
no, I
has
don't
some
really
of the
care
best
which side you're
potential
on,
that
just so
any
long as you
Disney
fill my
movie
pockets,
had
eh?
ever had. I just know that it could have been a 10 out of 10 if just a few elements had been changed slightly or improved. And a deep dive into the behind the scenes of this movie has pretty much proven that point to me. In fact, not only could this movie have easily been a 10 out of 10, but it could have possibly even been the very best Walt Disney Animation Studios movie ever created. But first, let me analyze the Zootopia that was actually completed and released. The version of the film we can all watch today, because I need to lay out exactly what does and what doesn't work about the version of the movie we got, so that I can explain how the version of the movie we almost got could have been the superior one. I think the first and most obvious thing about Zootopia, as it is, that I and most everyone else likes, is of course Judy Hopps and Nick Wilde, and the great chemistry between these two characters. Judy Hopps is a pretty relatable character, especially to someone like me, who's put in a position in which they want to achieve a certain dream, but struggle to due to the circumstances of the world in which they were born in. Specifically Judy here, wanting to be cop, but, you know, being small and fluffy. And I love the fact that despite everyone telling her she can't achieve it, she goes and proves them wrong anyways, through genuine hard work and determination, showing that even if she's starting from a disadvantage, that doesn't necessarily mean it's impossible to achieve her dreams. She just has to put in more effort than most other people would. And I think that's a great but still realistic angle to tackle this subject from, since I think it can be a little bit toxic to just tell people they can be whatever they want, no matter who they are or where they come from, because in a lot of cases that sadly isn't true, and people will eventually have to find out the hard way, this hard truth, if you know what I mean. However, that doesn't necessarily always mean that it is impossible to achieve these dreams. Some of them still can be reached, they just require more effort. Then we have Nick Wilde, who used to be the de facto main character of this movie before the scripts were changed a bit, but more on that later. The version of him that still exists in this final movie is quite an excellent character though. I love how completely different his worldview is from Judy's, since they come from basically completely different regions with completely different ideas of how the world works. Not to mention being on opposite sides of the predator and prey spectrum, and the ways in which their worldviews continue to clash, often to comedic effect, make for some of the best interactions between two Disney characters ever put to screen. One thing I love about these two characters is how they're both written to be intelligent, and neither one is the butt of every joke, and they're always trying to get the better of each other, until they eventually start to bond by realizing that they actually like more aspects of each other than they dislike. And honestly, it's just one of the best developing relationships across any Disney movie. And I like that it isn't necessarily a romantic relationship, but even just as two best friends, it all comes off as really believable. Especially because, of course, they do have their problems with each other still. It's not all sunshine and rainbows. And speaking of things not all being sunshine and rainbows, that brings me to what is arguably this movie's greatest asset, its main themes, specifically that of discrimination. One thing that I really like about this movie is the fact that it uses animal characters to portray its theme of discrimination, since it allows the theme to be interpreted by the audience without automatically being applied to specific types of discrimination in real life against specific groups of people, which not only gives it a broader appeal, but sort of gives a bit of a safe cushion in case the writers or animators somehow accidentally end up not being as sensitive with the topic as they could be, since it is left up to interpretation a little bit due to the fact that they're animals. But for the most part, I think the movie pulls off the theme well. I'm not one of those people out there who somehow thinks that some of the animals being called predators has some sort of real-life connotation to it, that some groups of people are predators. Oh my goodness, how could Disney draw a line between those two things? Like, just watch the behind the scenes on this movie. That is clearly not the intention of writers or directors or anyone involved in this movie. It's simply just the structure of the animal world, the predators and the prey.
On Spirit, you can change or cancel flights for no fee. So, do you go back to work? Or...
Anyway, the greatest achievement of this theme is the fact that it explores the idea that it's not just one specific marginalized group that is discriminated against, but that discrimination can go multiple ways and can affect multiple people of all types, like how both Judy Hopps and Nick Wilde are the subject of discrimination from different groups of people, and for different reasons. Since I'm kind of tired of stories that just sort of say one group is the bad guys and the other group are the good guys who are being attacked by the bad guys, which is rarely ever the truth, because the fact of the matter is, real life isn't just black and white. I really love how Judy's parents come into the equation for the theme of this movie too, since it shows us where Judy gets some of her preconceived biases about people from, those being her parents, who grew up fearing foxes specifically, genuine irrational levels. And it shows that not all people who may have come to have acquired these biases or stereotypical ideas of other people came to those ideas on their own and simply had them passed down to them by their parents or grandparents, who are the ones who actually came up with these ideas in the first place for whatever reason. But all the fear-mongering talk that her parents have said over the years has caused Judy to think in the back of her mind that they might be right, even though she may have never come to that conclusion on her own. And I love how the movie, throughout its runtime, toys with the biases that Judy has, and the way that she struggles not entirely knowing if they are true or not, such as during the ice cream shop scene, in which Nick Wilde is pulling off his big car, and how she at first thinks that her fox spray against him because he might be some sort of shifty individual, only to then change her mind and try to prove herself wrong because she doesn't or not, because it did turn out that Nick Wilde was a bit of a shifty individual, but does that necessarily correlate to the fact that he reflects? And all of this works so well because of the fact that you can find situations like this in real life all the time, in which there is sort of anecdotal evidence that, quote-unquote, certain groups of people are worse than others. But the problem is, people's first assumptions in these cases are usually the wrong conclusion. And most of the reason it may seem like some group is worse than some other group is because of complicated factors, usually having more to do with society and generational wealth and the other factors than what it has to do with what a person looks like or where they come from, which, in theory, should be completely irrelevant details. And sadly, a lot of innocent people end up suffering due to the biases that exist within people that come from anecdotal evidence, rather than definitive proof, because there is no definitive proof that anyone is lesser than anyone else, obviously. One very small and subtle scene that I actually quite like a lot comes after Judy and Nick are reunited before the finale of the film, and Nick hops inside Judy's car, in which she has a basket of vegetables, and is surprised to find that there's not just carrots there, but other vegetables, showing how it's not just Judy who has preconceived stereotypes of what other people are like, but Nick as well. And how, even in small ways that seem insignificant, these things can stack up and matter. But my favorite scene in this movie regarding the theme has to be the scene where Judy is answering the questions of the press, and Nick Wilde overhears the entire thing. What I love so much about this scene is that it reveals multiple things to us about Judy's character. The first of which being that it changes how we perceive Nick and Judy's relationship up to this point in the movie. Since during this scene, Judy accidentally but clearly makes it out to be that she has thought of Nick as being an exception to the rule, rather than proving that foxes aren't like what she thought they were, that he's simply just different from the rest, which is a very dangerous and toxic mindset to have, because it implies the idea that each and every fox and any equivalent incorporated people group in real life would have to independently prove themselves to be of worth and value when they shouldn't have to in the first place. I mean, it's like if everyone was in a race, but then one guy on the far side of the race started inside a giant pit and had to climb out of the pit first before he could start running down the racetrack. It's a clear disadvantage that is completely unfair. And Nick Wilde is like the guy in the pit here. He has to prove himself first before he's given the same equal opportunity and chance in life that everyone else is given by default. And it shouldn't have to be that way for everyone who's like him, because that's the way they're born. They have no control over it. And on top of that, there's the second reason. The fact that Judy doesn't realize what she's doing here. She doesn't realize how awful she sounds, because she genuinely does not understand this perspective that Nick has. I love this because it shows us that a lot of people who may seem like bad people or say things that we think are bad may not even realize what they're doing. And it's not because they're bad people, but because they're led to believe things that they genuinely think are true, even though they don't actually mean to do or say anything bad. And it's just another unfortunate side effect of stereotypes and discrimination. That people who are ignorant or blinded to the truth for whatever reason are made into lesser versions of themselves than they would be otherwise. And a lot of it can come down to trying to fit in and just do and say what everyone else seems to be doing or saying. And even when people are like Judy and they want to be better than the rest of the world, they want to give people like Nick Wilde a chance, they can still end up struggling to do and say the right things, because once those wrong ideas are cemented in their heads, it's hard to get them out, even when you know they're not true. And I also love how the conclusion of this scene makes Judy realize that what she's doing here, what she didn't realize she was doing there, goes against the very reason she wanted to be a police officer in the first place, to stand up for the misfortunate and oppressed. And now it feels like all she's done is help to make the misfortunate and oppressed even more misfortunate and oppressed. And the last great angle in this movie comes in the form of Judy's parents and the childhood bully eventually coming to terms with each other and realizing the errors of their ways. And just like how I love the fact that the discrimination in this movie is not entirely one-sided, I love this scene because it shows that both sides are flawed in their perspectives, but that both sides can also still change and become better people, and that no one is truly lost forever. With enough thought and effort, any broken relationship or flawed perspective can be repaired. But sometimes it will only work if both sides are willing to cooperate and see the problems from a nuanced perspective. Well, I guess that brings me to the end of the this movie, which is most of the movie. Well, I suppose I have to bring up the movie seems pretty well. Not quite as keen on the natural club scene, but it still does have its moments. Godfather reference, of course, another good scene. Well, except of course the convenient escaping from the problem. And oh, what do you know, that leads me to begin my critiques. Actually, let me start with the theme, since that's kind of what I was just talking about. As good as most of the thematic elements are in this movie, they don't all work perfectly. And the biggest thing that I do have is this movie's over-reliance on putting the blame on individuals. And that isn't to say that individuals are not to blame in some cases, a lot of cases, but choosing to discriminate against someone isn't always just a deliberate choice. As I made clear, I love the fact that Judy's discrimination ideas were passed down to her from her parents, but that's pretty much the only exception to the rest of the movie. Pretty much every other character we see in the movie who chooses to discriminate against is an individual who is shown to not like someone else for whatever unexplained reason. Just basic fear or whatever, or being mean because they think they're better. And like I said, these can be factors in discrimination in real life, but I just wish that the movie put more focus on the idea that society has conformed people often into believing these things are true. And the reason that a lot of people are afraid in the first place, or choose to think of themselves as being better, is because someone important or the news told them so. And it's specifically disappointing to me because of, well, stuff that could have almost been in the movie. A perfect example of what I'm trying to say about the fact that this movie mostly puts the blame on individuals comes in the form of Nick's backstory. The fact that he was bullied by a bunch of other kids for being a predator. And it kind of just comes off like they're bullying him due to the fact that he's a predator because they're mean. Due to the fact that they're children, they don't exactly have firmly rooted beliefs built in them just quite yet. And even though they say they don't trust the predator, implying there's some sort of fear here, that doesn't really come out in their voices. It's mostly spite. And while this scene is supposed to exist to build sympathy for you, I don't think it works that well as just a scene on its own. Nick's backstory in the original version of this is much better in my opinion. Don't worry, we'll get to that soon enough. And also, I think this movie's idea of idealized society that has flaws is treated as it should be. Since the movie essentially portrays it as Utopia is a perfect place, except for that one mean sheep who's manipulating people so that she can get power. But once she's gone, everything is perfect. And generally, we don't see enough negativity throughout the movie. Since if the people in the city are really on such an edge that they can be pushed over to believe the fact that all the predators are dangerous, then why do they not act that way for the majority of people? Pretty much only these elephant guys are ever mean. And honestly, it comes off more so that they're mean because Nick is small more than it is that specifically he's false. It sort of portrays this idea that anyone could just slip on a dime if they believe what society tells them, which kind of has this very low faith in humanity kind of vibes to it. And sure, while I do wish that there were more of a sort of overall society corruption thing going on, usually that has to do with firmly held beliefs that have been constantly pushed onto people throughout their lives, where to them it would feel weird if that wasn't the truth and they wouldn't think anymore. And that's why they do say bad things. Not just that they would do and say bad things because they're suddenly manipulating within the span of a couple days to believe that something is true. Although I do like that they included the scene with Gazelle and her friends, showing that the beast has something completely out. Maybe I'm just being overly negative. Like, if these were the only flaws with the theme, I could probably let it slide, even though the themes in the earlier version of the story were even better and didn't have these same flaws. However, there are other aspects to this movie.
Looking to refresh the style in your home? Here at Mathis Home, we can help you find exactly what you need during our spring style event. Whether you're looking
are the main reason it's not a masterpiece. And that has to do with the actual crime investigation that's going on. Something I haven't really talked about much up to this point. While it is a pretty engaging investigation, it runs almost completely on sheer coincidence power. I mean, first of all, it's a coincidence that Judy happens to run into Nick in the first place. Because if she didn't, she would never even come close to finding him in Otterton. Since her only clue has to do with running into Nick, discovering his pawn mill, and following him to find out that he made the same popsicles that Emmett Otterton happened to purchase in the past. And it's also a coincidence that the only reason Judy and Nick are able to escape Mr. Big because of the fact that Judy happened to coincidentally save his daughter in one random incident. Or else it would have totally been
greetings,
screwed
soldier.
here. It's
Welcome
also
to me humble
a
shop.
pretty big coincidence
Please, take a look at my
that
interest
this
here.
Panther guy
And no,
gives
I
them
don't
the
really
clue
care
of
which
night
side you're on,
howlers,
just
and
so
that
long as
Nick
you fill my
happens
pockets,
to come
eh?
up with an idea that leads them directly to all the people who went missing, even though that wasn't even the clue the guy was trying to say in the first place. And it's a pretty big coincidence that there happened to be a way to escape from their locked-in jail cell right before they're caught in this situation. And do I even need to mention the coincidence? You know, the coincidence to end all coincidences is the fact that the true hint that this guy telling them about night howlers meant was some random flowers that happen to be growing right outside where Judy decides to move to with her family to work. And they happen to know exactly what these flowers are, and they are in fact the exact flowers that the villain is using. And if none of these things happened to coincide, Judy would have never realized the truth and never would have gone back to Nick and never would have solved the problem. Like, there are still moments where there's genuine plot progression in this case that doesn't rely on coincidence, but I'm pretty certain at least half of the stuff that happens is coincidence. Oh, and can I just mention this one scene here where the police chief gets mad at Judy for seemingly leading them to a dead end, and then he tries to call off her case and make her resign right then and there. I do like the fact that Nick steps in and says their time hasn't actually run out and allows them to continue on their journey. But I'll tell you what I don't like. I don't like the fact that Judy says nothing about the wallet of Emmett Otterton that they found previously. I mean, that's far more progress and evidence than anyone else has made on this case up to that point. Doesn't that prove that clearly what she's saying has some merit to it, and she should in fact be given the ability to finish the case without Nick even having to step in here? I don't know, that just really bothered me for some reason. Oh yeah, and then there's the sheep, one of Disney's amazing twist villains. And the funniest thing is that the way she's written into the plot isn't necessarily the biggest problem. Like, her plan mostly makes sense. And I love that she basically ends up turning herself in. The reason she doesn't work though is because she's barely even a character in the movie at all. It's so clear to me that the writers wanted the twist that she was the true villain behind everything to be a surprise, that they were genuinely afraid of putting her in more scenes because it would be too obvious. So in order to make the twist some shocking revelation, they basically had to reduce her presence in the movie to almost nothing so that you'd never be thinking about her. And sure, while this does make the twist more surprising, it doesn't work because we fail to care about her as a character in the first place before the twist happens. And so essentially the twist becomes meaningless because we don't care enough for the shock value to hold any meaning. And so that is the mostly good but still somewhat flawed movie that Zootopia is. But it could have been so much more. The original version of Zootopia, before some major story changes happened, featured, as I mentioned before, Nick Wilde as the main character of the movie, with Judy being more of the most important side character who tags along with him for quite a while. And these two characters were originally used to show two completely different perspectives on the world of Zootopia itself. And you may think, isn't that exactly what they do in the final movie? Well, yes, to a certain extent, but not in the same way that it applied to the original story. You see, there's one major key difference between the original version of Zootopia and the version we finally got: the taming collars. This major plot point in the original version made it so that the only reason predators and prey lived in peace in Zootopia was not because they had gotten over their differences and changed their ways, but rather that prey believed the only way they could live in harmony with predators was essentially if they had control over them and prevented them from being able to access their primal instincts. And if they ever did even come close to that, the collars would shock them. This one difference almost completely alters the entire perception of how we see the city of Zootopia and the society here at large. Because it changes it from this utopian world where everything is perfect except for a couple of bad apples who refuse to get with the times, to a world in which the problems are created by a society who genuinely does not have enough faith in, well, it's not exactly humanity, but zoology? You know what I mean. To actually let people be who they are. At least some people, that is. Predators in particular. Of course, as we all know, Nick Wilde is one of them. And so, he has a collar in this version of the story. And because of this, he's essentially already labeled to everyone who even sees him at a glance. He lives in a world with a complete atmosphere of fear throughout the entire place. Despite being a good person at heart and wanting to do good things, people automatically label him as being bad just because of who they perceive him as and what they've been led to believe by the society around them. And because of this, Nick is not offered the same opportunities as other people. And I think this adds a lot more depth to his character, which is unfortunately missing in the final version of the movie. And all of this stuff revolving around collars adds a completely new meaning to the slogan of Zootopia itself, that anyone can be anything, making it, instead of being this semi-true statement, into an idea that reflects how society often tells us things that sound super positive, but they rarely ever back up the things they say. People will tell you all the time when you're a kid that you can be anything you want to be, but will they help you actually achieve your dream to be that thing? Fat chance. More likely they'll do everything in their power to stop you from achieving that dream. There's this fantastic deleted scene in which Nick wants to help out other predators who aren't allowed to be themselves anymore because of the fact that the taming collars basically force them to be completely docile all the time and hold back their true selves. So he comes up with an idea to fund a special place where they can let out who they are in a safe environment so no one has to be afraid. And this would be the perfect way for him to earn money. The problem is, his idea is too expensive to create in the first place, and most places simply won't hire him or pay him because he's a predator. And when he tries to get a loan from the bank to build this place, they won't give him a loan either.
There's just too much risk in loaning to mammals without credit.
Well, see, the thing is, I can't get credit if you won't loan to me.
Right, absolutely, and we will be happy to loan to you when you do have the credit.
This version of Nick Wilde I find to be even more relatable than the one in the final movie, because it shows us exactly why he's a con man. Because he's not even given opportunity by society itself to be what he actually wants to be, to do the things he wants to do, because of the position in which he was born in, something he has absolutely no control over. Oftentimes, I too find myself in a similar position, not that I've ever been a con man, but that I have had dreams of things I want to do, but because I was born into a poor family, I simply do not have the money in the first place to be able to get that job and thus be able to earn money back. Like, what I actually wanted to do with my life is become a film director. But you have to already have enough money to be able to move to Los Angeles to actually be able to get in that position in the first place. Meanwhile, if you're born rich, or born into a family that's already a part of Hollywood, you basically get a free ticket in without having to do any effort. Meanwhile, me over here, I have to do 10 times the effort to even have a chance of being accepted in the first place. And another fantastic scene, which sadly didn't make it to the final version due to the removal of the collars, was a scene in which the polar bear is having a quote-unquote celebration for his son becoming old enough to be a man, a big bear, and be given his taming collar for the first time. And this is honestly one of the saddest scenes that anyone has ever come up with for a Disney movie, because we can see how innocent and unaware this polar bear child is of what all this actually means, because he's been led to believe that Zootopia is this perfect place, and that getting this collar finally means you get to really be a part of it and join in with everyone else. But the truth of the matter is that Zootopia is not a perfect world or an accepting world whatsoever. And I find it absolutely chilling when the father is having his son recite the little acceptance speech of sorts. And at one point he says,
"With this color, Zootopia welcomes
With this color, Zootopia welcomes you.
With this color, Zootopia celebrates you.
With this color, Zootopia celebrates you.
With this color, Zootopia accepts you."
this is just one of those moments that's just so disturbing, but in the right kind of way. Because if Zootopia actually celebrated these people, then why would they try to control them and keep them in line? They don't believe in the equality of these people. They only believe that through their submission can they truly be accepted. And I love the way in which Judy watches this whole scene play out, completely unaware to the sad reality of it. She knows what a taming party is, but she's never been to one because she's not a part of that circle. She doesn't know what it really means. And it's to the benefit of her society to keep her in the dark so that she doesn't understand these things, because it allows them to manipulate her into accepting ways that are wrong. The less people know and understand something, the easier they are to control. And so we can see through this video that it's not just the predators who are being controlled, but prey who are genuinely good people and would want to do the right thing and let the predators be free, but are deliberately tricked into not knowing what is happening all around them so that they can't do anything about it. This much darker and more cynical version of Utopia.
There's nothing. We've got new bounty. There's 2 times more absorbent, so you can use less. And one sheet holds up better while ordinary brains fall apart.
Get more done with one bounty.
In a lot of ways, sadly, reflects the real world more so. Because the truth of the matter is, even if there are good people out there, the ones in control, the ones who have the most influence over the world, are the ones who decide what is right and wrong, whether or not it is right and wrong. And they hold all the power, and if they don't want you to have any power, then they will find ways to prevent you from getting any. But apparently, Disney was too cowardly. According to the behind the scenes, the directors claimed this movie was just too miserable or whatever. But I don't necessarily think that's true, because there's so much richness to the depth here. And in a lot of ways, Pinocchio could be considered a miserable movie with everything he has to go through. And that's the best movie Disney's ever made. I happen to think that the truth of the matter is more along the lines of Disney just being too afraid of creating a movie with darker themes like this, especially the kind of themes that kind of subtly fall out. And so they had the directors pivot the course of the movie into a more lighter, family-friendly kind of movie. And in the process, kind of created a lot of problems that the movie now currently has, such as things not being quite as well portrayed as they could be, and some of the most egregious instances, such as the flower scene, wouldn't even need to exist because there would be no poisonous, savage flower fumes predators, because that role would be taken simply by the idea of a predator not having a collar on or something like that, most likely anyway. I don't know, not all the details of the original version of the story have been fully released to my knowledge, but from what I know, Zootopia genuinely had the potential to be even greater than it was, to even rival something like Pinocchio. But I suppose I should still be grateful that the movie we did end up getting was still pretty good for the most part. I mean, could have been worse, just saying. Though, and of course, I can't forget to thank all my lovely Patreon subscribers and channel members too, who support me in an extra way. I give you all a salute. I am also on several social media platforms, and I have a gaming channel too if you're interested in any of that. Also, links in the description down below.
Well, if you enjoyed this video, a like would be nice, but also, perhaps you'd enjoy watching.
The Vanguards can't help you clear that pond on 18, but they'll make sure that's the only water hazard you have to worry about.
This video is sponsored by Squarespace, the ultimate all-in-one platform to help you design your own personal and professional website.
The original Toy Story trilogy is a masterpiece amongst animation trilogies, and a huge part of why they made this are the 2 sequel trilogies and excellent villains. Today I'd like to shine a spotlight on the best villain of this franchise, and the second best villain of Pixar's entire catalog in my opinion, only beaten by Syndrome. Lotso Huggin' Bear. And as for the other villain, I already covered Stinky Pete in my Toy Story 2 video. Toy Story 3 is a movie I haven't had an opportunity to express my love for yet, and I felt making a video based primarily on Lotso would be fitting, as many of the best elements of this film revolve around him in the story. And most of the other best parts are the parts of this movie that get talked about the most by other people, such as the ending with Andy and Bonnie, which is of course great, but it's not the only reason this movie is a masterpiece. So anyway, without further ado, I present why Lotso is a terrifying and outstanding villain. One of the first major things I'd like to mention about Lotso that makes him so great is how he is one of the most cruel, despicable, and evil characters ever put into an animated film. And yet, he appears as a kind, cuddling pink teddy bear. And he loves. If someone came up to me and asked me, what is the greatest movie sequel of all time, I'd probably actually say Toy Story 2, which isn't a movie I would have thought I would have said a while ago, but upon rewatching the movie recently, I've realized not only just how good this movie is, and I always thought it was good, but that it genuinely is one of the greatest sequels ever made, if not the greatest sequel ever made. You see, there is a distinct difference between a great sequel and a great movie, and of course, it is possible to be both at the same time, but there are different aspects to a great sequel than there is to what makes a great movie. You could be a great movie, but a terrible sequel. Or you could be a great sequel, but a terrible movie. Or you could be the best of both worlds, like Toy Story 2. Just about every scene in this movie is simply iconic. And it's hard to define what exactly makes a scene iconic. The visuals, the music, the writing, maybe a mix of all three. But I know one thing for certain, the many scenes of Toy Story 2 are very iconic. But what exactly is it about this movie that makes it such a great movie and such a great sequel? Well, don't worry, you'll definitely understand by the time I'm done explaining everything in this video. Oh, and also, you guys really liked my last Pixar analysis video, so here's to hoping this one reaches the same heights. What better place to start analyzing the movie than, of course, the beginning? This opening sequence of Buzz Lightyear on Zurg's planet is surprisingly not all that consequential to the plot, so in that sense, it's a bit of a strange way to open the movie, although you could argue, you know, it's part of Rex's character development, which is kind of
Jr.'s new snack stash was made for munchie madness. Mix and match.
It's kind of a strange subplot in this movie, and theoretically you could remove all those scenes and the rest of the story would be pretty much the same. But then again, why would you ever want to do that? This opening is amazing! This is hands down one of the greatest film openings I have ever seen. Not just because it's super fun and action-packed and filled with Star Wars references, but also because of how clever it is and surprisingly atmospheric. And also, I should mention that the Star Wars references aren't just a fun pop culture kind of thing, but they also tie into the first movie, with Buzz Lightyear's backstory in the first movie being a parody of Star Wars and all, which is just one of the small ways this movie perfectly follows up on the first movie. And of course, we get to see our first glimpse of Zurg in this scene, which is pretty cool actually, because Zurg was a character who was only mentioned in the first movie, and here we get to see him in the very opening shot of the second movie, something that probably most viewers were not expecting to see. Since Buzz Lightyear not being a space ranger and all, probably gave off the impression that Zurg wasn't really real and we'd probably never get to see him after all, but thankfully that wasn't the case because Zurg is pretty epic. I mean, it's almost an impossible task to say which Toy Story character has the best design, but Zurg is definitely contender for that spot. But the greatest part of this opening is the twist at the end of it. The part where Buzz Lightyear is shot dead and incinerated by Zurg. I just love how much this scene completely subverts our expectations in a good way. I know that word has come to mean bad things these days. And then of course it is revealed that all of this was actually just a video game, not real. And that the player, Rex, only lost because his arms were too short to press the buttons. Which leads me to another topic this movie is very good at, and that, of course, is the comedy. This is still one of Pixar's funniest movies they've ever made.
What's that? Jesse and Prospector are trapped in the old abandoned mine, and Prospector just lit a stick of dynamite thinking it was a candle, and now they're about to be blown to smithereens? Ride like the wind, Bullseye!
In a lot of ways, it's pretty close with the first movie in terms of its comedy. Even if the highest funny points of the first movie are probably still a bit funnier, this movie is also very consistent throughout. Even jokes that shouldn't work, like the one with this Butte sticker on Buzz Lightyear at the end. Like, that shouldn't be funny, you know? Butte, get it? Like, but for some reason, it is. Well, actually, I'm not just gonna leave you at that. I can explain why this joke is still funny. It's because the movie doesn't put any emphasis on it. The joke wouldn't be funny, for example, if the movie had zoomed in on his rear and slowly zoomed out. that would be putting too much emphasis on the joke, and it would just come off as a bit cringy. But because it's just a simple shot of Buzz Lightyear running forward, and they leave it up to the audience to notice the detail of the sticker, it's funny because we noticed something that the movie didn't put any emphasis on. Okay, I'm done explaining why the beat sticker thing is funny now. Back to where we were. Before we get into all the deep emotional story stuff, let's just keep the Buzz Lightyear ball rolling and talk about all the rest of his scenes first. So, plot, yada yada, Woody is captured. But when Woody is being captured, Buzz Lightyear does not just stand there. He immediately jumps out the window to go and rescue Woody because their friendship really means something to him now. Perfectly following up from the first movie, where of course they had a very rocky relationship until the end. I always hate it when movies regress characters back to how they were because, that's how it was in the first one, so we gotta do it again or the audience might not like it as much. Or some such nonsense, And just make Buzz and Woody have a rocky relationship for the whole movie again. That'd be pretty lame. I mean, of course, there is some, disagreements later on, but they don't last very long because the characters have come to understand each other by this point. And I like how this movie shows just how clever Buzz Lightyear actually is. He's able to put together several subtle hints as to who captured Woody. With just a feather and a license plate, he's able to put 2 and 2 together and figure out that it was Al from Al's Toy Barn who actually captured Woody. This is of course important because some people seem to misunderstand Buzz Lightyear. They think because he thought that he was a space ranger and not a toy, that he is somehow stupid. But you see, Buzz Lightyear was never stupid. Buzz Lightyear was able to do several things in the first movie that no idiot would be able to do. He clearly knew to put a seatbelt on when he was inside the car. He came up with the plan to infiltrate Pizza Planet by using the trash. And he is very good at organizing all the toys in Andy's room to make them work on a very efficient schedule to repair his ship, and many other things as well. And if you don't see the point of what I'm saying right now, that's because this is a dig at Toy Story 4 for completely ruining Buzz Lightyear's character and turning him into an idiot. But anyways, Buzz Lightyear puts together a team to go save Woody. And pretty much all of the scenes featuring Buzz Lightyear and the gang are amongst the most iconic in this movie. The crossing the road scene is literally so iconic that it is on the cover of the Blu-ray copy that I own. And not to mention this crossing the road scene is a perfect example of show don't tell comedy done right. The only thing anyone ever says in this scene is stop and go. And what makes it so funny is just how much chaos the toys end up unfolding just by crossing the road. Oh, and of course the part where Mr. Potato Head almost gets squished without even realizing it because of the poor vision of the cone. And then topped off with that extra cherry of
tasty taste on a soft, bite-sized blind. New Chips Ahoy Baked Bites.
Ah, that went well. Pure perfection. But is it as much perfection as the next part? The Al's Toy Barn section of the movie is the absolute stuff of a legend. The best legends, of course. What I love most about the Al's Toy Barn segment is how perfectly it expands upon the idea of toys coming to life. Like I said, perfectly following up on the first movie, one of the things a great sequel should always do, to find the perfect balance of something new, but still within the realm of what the first movie was about. And this toy store is perfect. Of course, the best part of the Al's Toy Barn section is when Buzz meets Buzz, and Buzz, and Buzz, and Buzz, and Buzz, and like 5,000 Buzz Lightyears. Of course, he only interacts with one of them because, we can't have 5,000 Buzz Lightyears talking about at the same time. That wouldn't really work, would it? But of course, this scene is a meme legend at this point. But memes alone do not make a great scene. But what does make this scene so great is when Buzz Lightyear does interact with that other Buzz Lightyear, which is yet another example of perfectly building off the first movie. In the behind-the-scenes making of for this movie, the director talks about how the funniest part of Buzz Lightyear in the first movie was that he didn't realize he was a toy and thought he was an actual space ranger, and he realized that Buzz Lightyear might not be as funny in this movie if they didn't have those parts. But they can't just reverse his character development. That'd be stupid, right? So then they had the big brain, genius idea of having 2 Buzz Lightyears. One who knows what a toy is, and one who doesn't. And he's at war against himself to convince himself that he's a toy. And even though they're similar, their world experiences shape them into different people. As we see the second Buzz Lightyear change throughout this movie to become a different person than the Buzz Lightyear that we know, even though they're technically the same toy. A subtle bit of nature versus nurture messaging there. And of course I can't not mention just how hilarious it is to see Buzz Lightyear in Woody's position from the first movie, yet again showing us just how much he's grown from the first movie. Also, the idea of multiple toys with the same character existing is also just genius. In the first movie, we never saw two of the same toy. Every character was essentially distinct from each other. But here, of course, we know the truth, which is that no toy is completely unique. There's going to be thousands and thousands of copies. Of course, while all this is happening, Rex has managed to find himself a player's guide to the Buzz Lightyear video game he failed at first, which not only helps him to discover the secret to defeating Zurg, but also serves as an explanation for what would otherwise be a minor plot problem. That being, why does this Buzz Lightyear join up with the other toys? Of course, Buzz Lightyear thinks the other toys are setting out to destroy Zurg, because that's what Rex wants to do in the video game. But this Buzz doesn't realize he's talking about a video game, he thinks Zurg is real. So of course, he interprets it as, we must defeat Zurg, you have the key. The writers of this movie thought through everything. And speaking of Zurg, the real Buzz Lightyear, attempting to escape from the copy and paste aisle, ends up accidentally unleashing Zurg. The toy, of course, not the real Zurg. And I absolutely love this detail on Zurg. Of all those toys where you could look through something and it would alter your vision, which actually leads me into another point of why this movie is so good. It's because even though the first movie did a pretty good job of showing us a world of toys and how their lives are different from ours, I feel like this movie plays into the idea of these being toys even more than the first movie does. There are just so many clever ideas in this movie relating to toys and what happens to them, where they come from, how they feel about everything. This movie genuinely makes you rethink the existence of your very own toys, even though you know they're not real. So of course Zurg follows the other toys as they head out to the true location of Woody, inside Al's apartment. And I think this whole apartment is a really great example of just how much the scale of this movie is increased from the first movie. In the first movie, it was basically just Andy's house, Sid's house, and a quick trip to Pizza Planet and back. And that was about it. Not too many locations or anything crazy, but in this movie we've already talked about crossing the street, going to a toy store, a 23-floor apartment building, an airport where we get to see inside the baggage section. Sometimes I wonder, the scale of this movie is so grand that even Toy Story 3 almost feels less grand despite it being the climax and still a fairly epic movie. So anyways, the rescue mission gets a bit complicated and Zurg comes in when the toys are trying to make their way out of the building now. And I love how the battle between Buzz and Zurg here perfectly replicates their fight at the beginning of the movie, but it doesn't go completely awry like how it did with the game in the beginning, since Buzz Lightyear himself is more skilled than Rex trying to play Buzz Lightyear. And then of course there's the legendary I am your father spoof scene.
No, Buzz. I am your father.
Is it the final vote?
We'll finally know which egg is loved most. Reese's or...
I am your father spoof scene.
No, Buzz. I am your father.
Which, for some reason, they decided to completely throw out the window when they were making Lightyear. And yes, I know it was a spoof, but still, I mean, as far as we know, in-universe it's canon. Like, why would they put that in the toy if it didn't happen in the movie? Which the Lightyear movie is supposed to be the movie that Andy saw, which therefore these are the toys based on that movie. Why would he say he's his father if he isn't? That's enough of Lightyear ranting. Back to the good movie. The best part of the whole fight, of course, is when Rex finally achieves greatness and defeats Zurg. And I love how he's so satisfied with defeating Zurg here that he doesn't even care about finishing the game. Well, I suppose that wraps up all the stuff with Buzz Lightyear and the toys. But of course, as great as all those scenes are, the real meat of the movie is all the stuff involving Woody. In the first movie, Buzz Lightyear is the one who's forced to make the really hard decision, where Woody knows the truth, and he has to learn to accept that he won't always be the favorite toy, and that his jealousy is turning him into a villain. But Buzz Lightyear is forced to completely rethink his entire existence, which nearly drives him to depression. But once they overcome that, they become the best of friends, realizing what really matters. However, in this movie, they've essentially swapped the roles of the main character, although Buzz Lightyear never almost becomes a villain like Woody did in the first movie. In this movie, it's Buzz Lightyear who's firmly in his stance on everything, and Woody who's forced to question everything and make the hard choices. At the beginning of the movie, Woody's afraid that Andy might not like him as much if he's missing his hat, and therefore he's not perfect, he's not complete. he's not good enough. Bo Peep tries to talk some sense into him, saying that his hat isn't what makes him Woody, and that if Andy truly loves him, he'll still play with him even if he doesn't have his hat. Woody is slightly skeptical, but he accepts Bo Peep's advice, and thankfully does find his hat. But not too long after, something much worse happens when his arm is ripped, and consequently, Andy chooses not to play with him or bring him on his trip, seemingly confirming his worst fears were actually right. It's such a heartbreaking scene when Andy puts Woody on the shelf and everyone asks if he's alright, and he just pulls himself back onto the shelf, not saying anything. The whole idea of a toy breaking is another really clever idea that perfectly follows up on the first movie. While toys did break in the first movie, the idea was more so that breaking a toy is wrong, like with how Sid Frankenstein's a bunch of toys into weird amalgamations that aren't their true selves. Or it's played more for laughs, like with Buzz's arm. But here, they really make you think about what does happen to these toys when they eventually break and wear down. As Andy's mom says,
"I'm sorry, honey, but you know, toys don't last forever."
and of course, everyone in real life knows this, but most people probably wouldn't have thought how that would affect the actual characters in-universe. Until now, of course. Then of course we have the fantastically terrifying nightmare sequence of Woody, which really puts into perspective just how these toys feel about the idea that they won't last forever. If you really think about it, so long as a toy doesn't break or wear out, they're essentially immortal. However, if they break, they die. They're gone forever. In a world where you could live forever unless you break, breaking is the very worst thing that could happen to you. But just because he's broken, Woody's not just going to sit there when Wheezy, another broken toy, almost gets sent into a yard sale. But of course, things don't exactly go too well, and Woody ends up being spotted by Mr. Al over here. And one thing I really like about this scene is how Woody thinks he's worthless because his arm is broken, but the second that Al sees him, he sees him as the most valuable thing he's ever spotted in his entire life, despite the fact that his arm is broken. He basically just brushes off the arm being ripped as some minor inconvenience. This is actually a really clever scene that ties into Woody's choices later on in the movie, and I'm surprised I've never heard anyone else ever mention how clever this is. And of course, these big choices I've been referring to so far come as soon as Woody arrives at Al's apartment, and he discovers that there's so much more to him than he thought. The whole idea of Woody actually being this really big star from long ago is such a genius concept for a sequel, since in the first movie, the idea was that Buzz Lightyear thought he was bigger than he really was. But in this movie, Woody, who thought he was just any other toy, actually turns out to be really big and important. One of the big parts of the collection, of course, being the old TV show which Woody used to be a part of, called Woody's Roundup. And I love the detail that the show is so old that it's made with puppets in black and white. But alas, the show did not last forever. It got canceled when people started to become more interested in sci-fi than old westerns. The climax of the show didn't even get made, leaving it unfinished. But because the show got canceled, and production on all the toys and everything stopped, is of course the very reason why he's such a collectible toy now. And can I just say, I also love just how genius the idea of a collector's toy being part of the plot of this movie is. Since the first movie only really explored the idea of toys being played with by children, this movie dives into the idea that there are also adults who value toys just as much, but for very different reasons. Just yet another way this movie geniusly expands upon the ideas of the first. And of course, I have to mention the other three characters who relate to Woody, those of course being Jessie, Stinky Pete, and Bullseye, all of which are such great additions to the Toy Story universe that it's almost hard to imagine what it was like before they existed. While Bullseye is a fun addition, he has nothing on the other two characters, as the dynamic between Woody, Jessie, and Stinky Pete is really what makes this movie such a masterpiece. Each of these three characters present a unique perspective, having been shaped by their vastly different pasts and experiences, all brought together for one ultimate purpose: to be sent to a toy museum to forever be put on display. Woody, of course, doesn't want to go to the museum. He wants to go back to Andy's house, because he believes that a toy being played with by a child is the very purpose of a toy, and what they should strive for in life, to make a child happy. Stinky Pete wants to go to the museum because he believes that being in a collection is more valuable than being played played with by a child, and Jessie wants to go to the museum for much more complicated reasons, but mainly because she doesn't see the value in being played with by a child anymore. So essentially it's 2 versus 1, and the thing I most like about this decision that Woody is forced to make is that neither option is inherently bad. Both sides give good reasons for why being played with a child is a good thing and going to the museum is a good thing, but there's also downsides to both as well. Of course, Woody points out that the downside of going to the museum is that you'll never be played with by a child or loved by anyone ever again. You'll just be watched from behind glass for the rest of your life. Just a cool thing to look at. Sure, you're valued, but it's never anything personal. There is no relationship with an object behind a glass and a child looking at it from beyond, or more likely adults, since you know it's a museum. But then of course there's the counter-argument against Woody, which is that being played with by a child won't last forever. Eventually, children grow up and they don't want to play with toys anymore. Of what value are you then? And of course, Jessie knows all this very personally. When Woody tries to argue with her that being played with by a child is the best choice and what he has to do, Jessie finally reveals why she's so adamantly against the idea, in what is quite possibly the world's hardest try not to cry challenge. Until Up anyways. Also, Charles Muntz is one of the best Pixar villains, guys. I just hadn't seen Up in a while and forgot about him, so you can stop posting comments about him on my Hopper video now. Anyways, where was I again? Oh yes, the Try Not to Cry challenge. This scene is, in my opinion, quite possibly not just the greatest scene in this movie, but the greatest scene in Pixar history. And it's not just because it's sad, but because of how much depth and meaning there is behind it. Jessie used to be just like Woody. When her owner was younger, she used to play with her all the time and loved her like no one else. But those days could not last forever. Eventually, Emily would grow up and change. No longer did she care about cowgirls or dolls or silly things like that. She wanted to be a real woman with makeup and cool friends and cars. But you see, Jessie couldn't understand that. All she knew was that being loved by a child was her purpose in life. So when Emily forgot about her, all those years of waiting, she held out hope that it was just a mistake. Emily still really does love her. But when Emily finally did find her, she didn't still love her. Her only thought was that it was pointless to keep her, and it would be better to donate her off to someone else who could love her instead. What makes this so crushing for Jessie, though, is that she waited all those years in vain hope, only to have all her hopes and dreams crushed in an instant. She wanted so badly for something to be true, only to realize in the end that it wasn't. It made her completely rethink her entire existence. All that time she thought Emily loved her, when for a good portion of that time, she didn't. But at the same time, it's hard to hate Emily's decision too. She'd changed over time and become a different person. And sometimes when people change, they are no longer compatible with each other. And the sad truth is that not all friendships last forever. And often when friendships break apart, it hurts one person much more than the other. All these factors have led Jessie to believe that being played with by a child is pointless because it'll just end one day and you'll be heartbroken. All this time, Woody thought that Jessie just had something against him and Andy, but in reality, Jessie was just trying to save him from having to face the same loss and heartbreak that she went through. And upon hearing this, Woody starts to reconsider his choice, as Woody also knows that what Jessie is saying is true. He's already been hurt by Andy choosing not to bring him to cowboy camp, and so far it seems like Al treats him with more respect. He even brought in Gary from the Gary's Game chess short, the most iconic and greatest Pixar short of all time, to fix his arm, in a scene that's just as iconic and great as the Gary's Game short. And of course, around now is when that scene I kind of skipped over earlier, where Buzz and the gang actually show up and find Woody takes place. And of course I skipped it because it relates more to Woody's story than their shenanigans. And this is another one of my favorite scenes in the movie as well, as Woody, who's now been convinced that going to the museum is the right choice, is forced to confront his new choice when Buzz shows up, and Buzz reminds Woody of the very things he said to him in the first movie, and Buzz giving Woody the "You are a toy" is just perfection, perfectly showcasing how both characters have changed over time. At this point, Buzz feels closer to Woody's ideals in the first movie than Woody does at this point, and it takes Woody turning down Buzz for him to finally realize that he's wrong. Going to the museum is not the right choice, as sometimes it takes us feeling the consequences of making the wrong choice for us to realize that it was the wrong choice. Woody now realizes that going to the museum isn't the best option. It's the selfish choice. the choice that only benefits him. But being a toy is about more than just being loved by a child. It's about being there for them when they need you. And Woody at last realizes that the best option is to go back to Andy's house, but to also bring Jessie with him. That way she won't have to be sent back into storage. Jessie is uncertain, but seeing the power of Woody's convictions has managed to break a small hole in her hardened heart.
But uh-oh, looks like Stinky Pete isn't as honest as he seemed. And could we just talk about how great of a villain Stinky Pete actually is? I briefly mentioned in my Hopper video that he's one of my favorite Pixar villains, and there's definitely a lot of reasons why. First of all, his concept is pure genius. The idea of a toy who didn't sell well, and is essentially trapped inside his box because no one ever opened him to ever play with him, and thus causes him to become jealous of all the other toys who got played with, is simply perfect. And I love how Stinky Pete's jealousy kept festering in him until eventually it caused him to snap. And when he snapped, he suddenly thought, what if I'm better than all those toys who got played with? I'm superior to them. I'm perfect. They get played with and discarded, but I'll be in pristine condition forever.
Stinky Pete tried to play the nice guy and powder Woody up as the greatest ever. That way he'd surely be convinced to go. But he overestimated Woody's ego, and now his act is over.
And his motivation for going to the museum is really that he wants validation. He wants people to love and adore him because he never got any love in his life before. And he doesn't care whose lives he has to ruin in order to get what he wants. And another little detail adding to Stinky Pete's jealousy is when he gets upset that the Woody's Roundup show was canceled because of a bunch of sci-fi space-related stuff instead. And his complaint ties into his idea that things don't last forever, that eventually you'll be seen as worthless and thrown away. But thankfully, despite Stinky Pete sabotaging Woody's escape, he was able to shout out to Buzz at the last second to warn him. And here we have one of the greatest film climaxes of all time. And I really do mean that. I mean, first of all, we have the epic elevator scene with Zurg that I already talked about, followed by another equally as epic car chase scene, where the toys managed to drive a full-sized Pizza Planet truck and catch up with Al on his way to the airport. But even more than that, the actual airport scenes themselves. The baggage section scenes of this movie are quite possibly the most iconic thing to come from this movie. The amount of creativity going into this movie is absolutely mind-blowing. You wonder, how did they come up with this idea that the climax of the movie would be set in the baggage section of an airport?
Stinky Pete tries one last time to prove to Woody that his stance is right and Woody's is wrong. But instead, Woody proves to him just how strong the power of love really is. If he is right and Andy truly does still want him, then he'll love him despite his flaws. But Stinky Pete could never understand the true power of the connection between a child and a toy. He has neither loved anyone or been loved by anyone in his entire life, and he'd rather love himself more than anyone else.
And I absolutely love the way that Stinky Pete is defeated. He'd come to think that he was so far above all the other toys that playtime was meaningless at this point to him. That now, the very thing that he wanted all those years ago, to be played with by a child, is his worst nightmare. And so Woody gives him exactly what he wanted all those years ago. And unlucky for him, he ends up with quite possibly the worst owner he could have wanted. Pure satisfaction. Unfortunately, they were dilly-dallying a little bit too much, and Jessie's box gets sent all the way to the actual airplane. But of course, Woody cannot let that happen. And when he rides off to save her, Randy Newman cleverly replays the song from Woody's Roundup when Woody was rushing off to save Jessie in the show.
Make every watch count.
The movie respects your intelligence enough to connect the two dots before the actual characters do. And it's just crazy to me how all these Toy Story movies, except 4, have such epic climaxes when they're about toys. But I'm not complaining or anything because they're amazing. And of course, Woody does save Jessie from a terrible fate of being trapped alone forever for the rest of her life. And in the process, symbolically finishes the climax of Woody's Roundup. And that of course brings us to the final scenes, where we get a heartwarming close to Jessie's storyline as she finally gets another owner to love her like Emily once did. But most importantly, I like the final shot of Woody and Buzz, where Woody explains that even if the good days don't last forever, he'd rather live them to their fullest than not have lived them at all. A beautiful final scene, to close out the story. Everything about this movie just works so perfectly. Basic elements like the comedy and music are on point. The animation still holds up surprisingly well for a 1999 movie anyways. The characters and story are so perfectly written, following up the ideas and premises introduced in the first movie in all the most genius and interesting ways. The arcs put our characters through tougher struggles than they faced in the first movie, well, except maybe Buzz, who, was forced to question his entire existence in the first movie, and they make us rethink the very way we see our own toys in real life. Now that's some mind-blowing stuff right there. And I absolutely love how the themes of this movie come back in Toy Story 3, when the ideas of toys just being trash that'll be thrown away one day is essentially the motivation for Lotso's character arc, and the consequences of choosing to go back to Andy and live out the rest of his days being a toy loved by a child are fully explored. So in retrospect, Toy Story 3 makes Toy Story 2 an even better movie than it already was. And the craziest thing about Toy Story 2 is that the creators made the movie in 9 months. True story. And all that combined is why I believe that Toy Story 2 might just be the greatest sequel ever made, and is surely one of the greatest movies ever made.
If you enjoyed this video, why don't you check out my previous Pixar analysis of Hopper from A Bug's Life, or you could check out whatever random video YouTube has decided to recommend over...
Chocolatey. Big like over 2 times bigger. And it comes in 3 delicious flavors.
YouTube has decided to recommend over here, but most importantly of all, stay iconic.
The Incredibles 2 is one of the most disappointing movies I have ever watched. The first movie is an all-time classic in the Pixar library, and there was plenty of room to expand upon the world and characters. But I could go on for quite some time about the elements of this sequel that don't quite work, or are just flat-out bad.
If we break off one of the foils and turn the rudder, we can steer the ship away from the city.
That might work.
I'll turn the front. You turn the rear.
A smaller part of the city. We can turn away from the big buildings and hit the suburbs instead.
I am so proud of you.
Why is he upset? I mean, if she succeeds, then it means that he can go and be a superhero too. Can I just say, all these new superhero characters are just so stupid.
But there is one element of this movie that I believe, above all else, is the reason it doesn't live up to the first movie. Its villain, Evelyn DeVore, aka the Screenslaver. Also, her name is supposed to be a joke because it sounds like evil endeavor. Just a little fun fact for you there. Okay, now firstly, why I believe Screenslaver fails as a villain is that she's a twist villain whose twist just doesn't work.
What if the pizza guy is really a pizza guy, but it was controlled by the screens built into his glass?
You are good. Unexpected. Ooh, shocker.
Why does the twist not work? Well, because early on, she says that she invented the camera tech that Screenslaver will clearly be seen using later.
And the picture is outstanding.
Thanks. Designed it myself.
Stay alert, Barnacle Boy. He's up to something.
This makes her an insanely obvious suspect right off the bat. And it is hard to believe no one in the movie would link her tech skills to Screenslaver, especially Elastigirl. Secondly, she clearly shows she has a chip on her shoulder at the start, disagreeing with her brother.
Or Dad could have taken him on to the safe room as soon as he knew there was trouble.
I disagree strongly. Going into it right now.
Making her an obvious suspect once again, since no one else, and I genuinely mean no one else in this entire movie, ever shows any signs of disliking anything to do with superheroes.
I'm glad to see you back in your shiny outfit. That means so much coming from you.
See, more evidence that despite superheroes being illegal, no one dislikes them. You know, it's what's it called? Ludonarrative dissonance. You know, where what's happening on screen doesn't match what we're told.
Basically, my point is that it is too obvious she is the villain. The only other possible suspect of any relevance to the plot is her brother. And sure, he could have been lying about everything, but that wouldn't benefit him, since if he didn't like superheroes, it would make more sense for him to do nothing. The twist might work better if there had been multiple people in the plot who were shown to heavily dislike superheroes. But instead, the movie spends all this time telling us that superheroes are unpopular and that needs to change. But everyone we ever see in this movie only ever shows that they are enthusiastic and excited to see heroes. Not to mention, this movie just has very few important characters who could be the villain. I mean, it's not gonna be Dicker. Tony would be a wild twist, but his mind was erased, so he wouldn't really have a motive, unless he was lying about his mind being erased. Say, this actually sounds like it could have been an interesting direction to take the character. It's definitely not gonna be Edna Mode or Frozone. The ambassador, perhaps? She doesn't do much and only shows up halfway into the movie. Well, I think I've made my point. The second big reason I think Screenslaver fails is because her tech is far-fetched. What do I mean? Well, the movie never explains how it works. It can hypnotize people, but how? Apparently Evelyn can control people when she isn't even at a computer. How does that work?
Good question.
And on top of that, she can control multiple people at the same time. Once again, how? She claims at one point that she is using pre-recorded dialogue. So how come the characters can do and say things in the moment and react to their environment if everything has to be programmed ahead of time?
Isn't that kinda impossible?
That's a possibility.
Sometimes people are just sitting there empty-headed, and other times, she is controlling an army of supers and having them all act independently at their maximum efficiency.
Rubbish. Such a weapon is scientifically impossible. Doesn't exist.
All this actually leads me nicely to the next angle I want to cover. You see, Evelyn's tech would make more sense if it always just made people hypnotized, and nothing more than that, since it would line up with her opinions on society more. Then again, her opinions on society don't really make sense either, nor do they have basically any relevance to the plot whatsoever.
You got everything under control.
Not as much as I want to. I remember not really liking her very much.
Evelyn has two goals in this movie, and neither of them are executed very well. One of these goals is to make a point to society that they have become lazy and brainless sheep who just watch stuff all the time and let media control their lives.
I am now going to assault your mind with subliminal messages.
The chicken or the egg? The question isn't which came first. It's which comes with peanut butter. Duh.
Which might be an interesting theme if it wasn't completely irrelevant to literally everything else in the movie. Like, what does her opinion on this matter have to do with the plot?
Good question.
Basically nothing, other than an extremely thin connection to her disliking of her brother and his corporate selling of things, which is another thing that doesn't have much impact on the plot. Nothing that the Incredibles family or the general public do have anything to do with what Screenslaver is saying. For her opinions to be relevant, she would have to have a point, and the characters would have to reflect upon their own actions and lives to see what she is saying. Like how Buddy's reunion with Mr. Incredible in the first movie makes Bob rethink how he reacted to him in the past, and how, even though he didn't mean to offend him or destroy his dreams, his harsh nature is indeed what caused Syndrome to ultimately become a villain. This later affects how Bob sees his whole life, and how his selfishness and stubborn attitude keep pushing people away, even his own family, who he almost loses. But Screenslaver's comments are basically never brought up, and none of what she says applies to the heroes or changes their views. And how they respond to this doesn't make them into better people, because there basically is no response.
Technology worse than what you're doing?
Hey, I'm using the technology to destroy people's trust in it.
I'm using it to destroy people's trust in it. Not really. You've not infected people's, like, own devices or what they watch on TV. You just make, like, you know, max headroom incident type videos.
I genuinely don't know why any of this was even included in the movie.
Possibly there were plans to add in some scenes where Mr. Incredible tries to take the easy way out of raising his family and leave things in the hands of technology and devices, only to let his children be influenced by media and wrongly turn against him because they are led to believe lies about superheroes. But nope, nothing like that happens. And then, of course, there is the other goal of Screenslaver, and the biggest of all the reasons why she fails as a villain. Her plan to make superheroes illegal makes approximately 0 sense. So, get this. Early on in the film, we find out that Evelyn doesn't like superheroes because her father was so dedicated to them that when they didn't arrive to save him as he had hoped, he died. Later, we will find out that this one moment is basically her entire reasoning for what she is doing. And can I just say, what? Are you really telling me that her hatred of superheroes comes from their failing to save just one person on one occasion?
Please,
not to mention, said person was specifically obsessed with them. Evelyn acts like it was the superhero's fault for not showing up, when really it was her dad's fault. Nay, his choice to put his life in their hands.
Yeah, so just because your parents relied on superheroes doesn't mean like most people do. For years, they didn't want superheroes. Have you watched the first movie, even?
The supers did nothing in this event at all. They couldn't come because they were either illegal or being hunted down by Syndrome. Yeah, don't think I didn't notice Gazerbeam is the same hero Mr. Incredible found dead on Nomination Island in the first movie. The true villains were the robbers, who the supers could have stopped if they weren't illegal. This whole event might be fine as anecdotal evidence to support Evelyn's perspective, but as the main reasoning, it makes no sense. The movie doesn't even give her any other reasons for why she's doing what she's doing, other than the extremely far-fetched connection she tries to make between people being lazy and supers being a bad thing. And it gets worse.
Oh no.
Evelyn wants to make sure heroes are illegal, but there's one big problem with that. They already are. Arguably, they shouldn't be illegal since the first movie tries to imply that they are legal again with its ending. But regardless, she technically doesn't have to do anything she does in this movie to achieve her goals. And in fact, as I will soon show, her actions only push her further away from her goal most of the time. All she had to do was try to secretly sabotage her brother's plans to make heroes look good by making their equipment fail or prevent public speakings, etc. But instead, she makes this extremely over-the-top plan that doesn't even have a logical end goal. Now, I hear you all asking, what does Evelyn do exactly? Well, let's see. First, she hijacks a train to put people in danger, in a situation where Elastigirl is right there and can save them, thus making Elastigirl look good for saving them since they would have died without her. Hey, wait a second. Isn't that the exact opposite of what she's trying to achieve? Like, why doesn't she cause a problem in a place without a hero to prove the world doesn't need heroes because people can take care of themselves? No, instead she basically just helps her brother to prove his point instead.
Oh yeah, it's all coming together.
Then she hijacks a news station and some helicopters to put an ambassador in trouble. But guess what? Not only is Elastigirl right there once again, but she literally tells her what she is doing and provokes her into stopping the problem.
Hijack the ambassador while it's still airborne. Right, Elastigirl?
Nature-made magnesium is made to care for your heart, bones, and muscles.
Once again, only helping her brother with his point of view and not proving her point at all, or really doing anything to further her position.
Ironically, if Screenslaver wanted to make superheroes look bad, then Syndrome's plot from the first movie would have made a lot more sense for her to do.
She then tries to set up an event to throw Elastigirl off her trail by framing someone else. But this doesn't make any sense, because the nobody she frames will obviously be innocent when they find out he's telling the truth about not knowing anything.
What's going on? What'd I do? What'd you guys do to me?
That's right, punk. Blame the system.
And all it ends up doing is causing Elastigirl to figure out who she actually is.
Maybe he is a misunderstood genius.
Maybe he is a perfectly understood idiot.
Not to mention, why didn't she just hijack Elastigirl's mind right from the start, thus preventing her from doing anything to make Heroes look good? And then, of course, we get the big reveal scene, in which she tells Elastigirl everything. Technically, she doesn't really have a reason to tell her anything other than to gloat and rant. If she was smart, she would probably just keep Elastigirl forever frozen here, or never take the goggles off her. Like, why does she take the goggles off her at all? Just so she can explain her whole plan, giving Elastigirl a better chance at understanding how to stop her?
Anything is possible. You haven't exactly invented anything.
And all of this brings us to the baffling ending of this movie. The boat ride of doom and stupidity.
Oh dear.
The first major problem that I have here is, of course, one of my previous complaints, that being how Evelyn can control multiple people at the same time, as it is here that it really gets out of control. But on top of that, her plan to make the heroes look bad has so many holes, it's ridiculous. Like, how will anyone believe the heroes genuinely mean what they are saying when they neither sound like themselves, nor do their opinions or personalities match how they've acted in the past?
Good question.
Years of mandated hiding and silence have made us bitter.
Very believable speaking. This definitely matches her tone of voice when she talks normally.
I mean, there's video evidence of what they were like in the past. It's not like film cameras don't exist in this world. I mean, the whole plan wouldn't work if there wasn't cameras and screens. Why would the public believe they would want to mess up this event when it only serves to benefit them?
Good question.
Also, how will nobody notice that every hero who is a jerk happens to wear the same goggles?
That's a very good question. I wish I could think of a good answer.
You're gonna help me make supers illegal forever.
And no one's gonna question that everyone who looks bad wears those glasses. Like, if she was actually smart, she'd make tiny screens that are contact lenses, so no one can tell.
I know.
Which, by the way, Evelyn straight up admits to creating herself.
Hey, did you make the new masks?
Yeah, night vision, etc. They look good, right?
And do I even need to mention that it is obvious that everyone on the ship is being controlled by the giant hypno screen?
And there's not going to be any camera footage of the giant screensaver screen brainwashing everyone, proving that the screensaver was the one who did it.
And the fact that nobody reacts to the Super's sudden attack. And, as it was revealed earlier in the movie, people who are hypnotized don't remember what happened to them when they were under the control of the screenslaver.
I have no memory of the event.
So anyone on this boat who would have survived this event would easily be able to prove the screenslaver was tampering, since they will all have no memory of that moment. And that cannot be a coincidence. Additionally, why does Evelyn wait until after the heroes are officially legalized to make her move?
Good question.
So she waited for them to, what, legalize it? Make it illegal again?
Once again, she isn't really doing much to forward her own goals. Instead, she assumedly waits to make it look like they were waiting for the right opportunity to strike. But that's just ridiculous. If the heroes actually wanted to abuse their freedom, then why would they say so publicly? That would only cause the government to immediately reverse their decision. Now, you might think that's exactly what Evelyn wants. But the problem is, it's completely unrealistic. No one is going to believe that the heroes are not being controlled here, especially with how obvious the control goggles are. Also, how on earth was Evelyn ever going to keep control of the heroes if the glasses could fall off so easily? Yes, my army of Doom heroes are ready to attack. No, Mr. Credible, not that way. There's a big rock. You'll trip. Hey, what's going on? Supervillain has been controlling my mind the whole time.
I can't imagine what went wrong.
Like, seriously, even the movie backs up my point here. As soon as Elastigirl has her glasses knocked off by Jack-Jack, she's able to free everyone, who are in turn able to free the others in a domino effect.
No!
See, look, if her plans could fall apart so easily, then clearly she didn't think things through, did she?
I know.
Like, what's she gonna do when people find out that her obvious plans are obviously hers? Like,
I know.
She has no backup.
And couldn't you have put a little more effort in making sure they stay on their face? Like, if it's so easy to just take it off, like...
Oh, I swear, sometimes I want to take your big, dummy head and just...
Screenslaver's plan is being held together by the tiniest, thinnest string that could snap at any moment. And also, she has no backup plan either. Where is she going to go if she fails? Escape the country? Live out a boring, pathetic life?
Feel free to roam about the cabin. Or just relax and let the cabin roam about you.
Wait, what's she even doing at this point?
This is her master plan. Wait, yo, spinning, that's a good trick.
I mean, what is she even gonna do if she wins?
The reputations of superheroes are ruined.
What? That's insane to hear what you're saying?
Like, she's saying all this as if she has somehow already won. Even though every single thing she's done has failed. It's all only proof superheroes are right. It made her as Screenslaver look like the villain.
Her goal to make heroes illegal doesn't really benefit her in any way personally, so I guess it really just boils down to revenge. Revenge for an event she wasn't even a part of, and is a stupid reason to hold a grudge in the first place.
What a stupid fool you are.
The fact that you saved me doesn't make you right.
So, did they even need to explain anything, or was it so obvious that they're like, nah, yeah, she's the villain.
Yeah,
we'll arrest her.
Yeah, the fact that they don't have to explain anything just proves how stupid her plan is.
Mopping is hard work. Then I tried the Swiffer Power Mop. It has a built-in solution that breaks down dirt on contact. Plus, its 360-degree swivel head cleans up along baseboards and even behind the toilet. Bye-bye, bucket. With the Swiffer Power Mop.
Evelyn / Screenslaver is, in a lot of ways, the anti-syndrome, since she is a villain who just gets worse and worse the more you think about her and her plans. At first, you think she's a cool twist villain who has intriguing political commentary and a crazy plan that makes her super dangerous, but then you sit on things, and more you start to see that basically none of that is true, and it only appears to be at first because the movie has decently good presentation. I mean, Brad Bird is a good director, and of the films of his that I have seen so far, this is probably his weakest. So I generally expect him to be able to create great content. I think he just needed more time to refine the script, really rework the villain plan and motivation, and maybe make a few changes to the family dynamic. And it might have been a pretty solid film. The first movie, on the other hand, is so perfect that I continue to be impressed with it year after year. In contrast to Evelyn, Buddy is a character who I only find more interesting the more I analyze him. I already made a whole video doing so because I thought it was so interesting. But the crazy thing is, I actually missed a few important details in that video. For example, I said Buddy remembered the moment Mr. Incredible rejected him once and for all perfectly, but I was actually wrong. And that's a good thing, because a detail that I ended up missing, which my comment section very kindly pointed out to me, actually adds even more depth to Syndrome. While Buddy does obsess over the event and refuses to let it go from his memory, the way he remembers it in his head is slightly different from reality. In his mind, he has completely forgotten about Bon Voyage, and remembers the moment as Mr. Incredible deliberately speaking down to him just because he didn't like him. This shows us that Buddy's obsession with that moment has made him believe that Mr. Incredible's denial was a deliberate screw you moment to the idea of him ever being a hero. And it removed the nuance of Mr. Incredible's position, since he was trying to deal with a villain and Buddy was starting to get on his nerves. Anyway, my point is that Syndrome is a villain who gets better with more analysis and critical examination of his character, and Evelyn only gets worse. Hopefully, The Incredibles 3 will bring the franchise back to what it was like in the first movie, with rich characters and world building, and a lot of depth and details, all carefully considered.
So, what do you think of this thing?
I'm worried.
Oh, and before any of you comment,
I actually did not plan for this video to tie into the new announcement of the third movie. That is just a coincidence. But hey, who am I to deny extra views based on happy coincidence?
I, of course, must now give a special shout-out to all my patron supporters, as well as channel members, who go that extra step in supporting me. It would also be really cool if you followed me on many of the social media sites I have a presence on, and I also additionally have a YouTube gaming channel if you want to check that out. Links in the description and all that stuff below. And while you're still here, if you haven't seen it yet, why don't you check out my video on Syndrome from the first Incredibles movie, or if you're not interested in that, then maybe a video for some other Pixar movie. I've got a whole playlist of Pixar-related stuff. But most importantly of all, always remember to be iconic.
What makes a trip unforgettable? You'll know it when you feel it. Make memories with Get Your Guide.
Welcome to my humble shop.
Travel
Please take a look at my
experiences.
interest here. And no, I don't really care which side you're on, just so long as you fill my pockets, eh?
So, a while ago, I made a video about why I thought Wreck-It Ralph was an impeccably perfect movie, as in flawless. Unfortunately, that movie is not the subject of this here
This
video.
wee gun's called the Spencer
my
Carbine.
friends, we
Quick,
are gathered
light
here
and easy to
today
reload.
to
I
discuss
don't really hate if you
a
want to make use of this
cinematic
weapon.
tragedy, a movie so horrendous that it has descended to the lowest most rung of Disney movies, the unspeakable depths that I like to refer to as the unholy trinity, since there are only 3 movies that are that bad in that category. This being one of them. Oh, and don't worry, we'll get to those other 2 unholy trinity movies eventually. Feel free to leave your guesses as to what those other 2 unholy trinity movies are in the comments down below. And this movie I'm referring to, which I'm sure you all know because you've seen the title and thumbnail, is of course Ralph Breaks the Internet. Ralph Breaks the Internet is a movie that, when I first watched it, I thought it was fine. Nothing particularly special, probably in the lower half of Disney's animated run, but not on the same level as some of their other terrible movies. And then I saw a little video on YouTube titled, Why Ralph Breaks the Internet is a Cinematic Disaster. And upon reaching the end of this video, I started to think, you know, he kinda has a point. And ever since then, my opinion on this movie has been slowly decreasing. As not that long ago, I rewatched the movie for myself again, and it was terrible. I was almost ready to give up watching about over halfway through. And then I watched it again. And upon this most recent watching, I now despise this movie with every fiber of my being.
There are some corners of the universe which have read the most terrible things. Things which act against everything that we believe in. They must be fought.
Is indeed just that bad. And if you don't know why, then trust me, you will know by the end of this video. Even though in Schaeferless's video on why Ralph Breaks the Internet is a cinematic disaster, he tore the movie apart, I honestly don't think that he was harsh enough. This movie is beyond abysmal, even down to the smallest of details. The only parts of any worth in this entire movie are the production values and maybe a few comedic sections here and there, but trust me, they are spread few and far between. But I just wanted to mention that right off the bat, this movie is already a downgrade from the original because they did not reuse the 8-bit Mickey intro that the original Wreck-It Ralph had. I don't know if it's because they just thought it wouldn't fit as much since this movie isn't that much about video games as much as the first movie was, or if they just forgot, which, you know, honestly, I'd believe that answer probably more than the first, considering how much else they forgot about the first movie, as you will see. It doesn't take very long into the movie for you to realize a consistent fact about this movie, or should I say, about Ralph in this movie. That being, of course, that he is a complete idiot with almost no intelligence whatsoever, which, and I shouldn't have to say this, is completely untrue to his character and not at all like what he was in the first movie. Sure, he may have had a couple moments where he was being dim, but he wasn't stupid, just oblivious or ignorant in those cases. But in this movie, his IQ has practically been reduced to 0. There are many, many examples to come which really push this point to the forefront. Unfortunately, it's not just Ralph that has it bad in this movie. Vanellope is also terrible in this movie. Her entire story is completely horrendous, and you'll you'll see why as we go along. But I also wanted to point out that at the beginning of the movie, when she's doing the race in Sugar Rush, she's just insulting the other drivers as she races. I know Vanellope is a very blunt character, but I never took her for a jerk. And it's honestly kind of strange, too, because she's not that much of a jerk throughout the rest of the movie, so this scene is just extremely out of place. And of course, I could go on and on about how Ralph and Vanellope's friendship has been completely ruined from the first movie. Not only is the plot of this movie basically about breaking up their friendship, but we'll get to that later, but their friendship in the first place is just misrepresented and completely inaccurate to how they were in the original movie. Ralph has just been turned into a complete obsessive over Vanellope. This doesn't even make any sense. I mean, not only was he not obsessed with her in the original movie, but he should have far more friends than just Vanellope, yet this movie basically treats it as if Vanellope is his only friend, and if he loses her, he loses everything, which doesn't even make any sense. I mean, what about Felix? They had completely made up by the end of the original movie. Surely they're best friends now. I mean, Calhoun's still around, and even the Nightlanders, for Pete's sake. I mean, basically everyone in this universe thinks Ralph is a cool guy at this point, so how come he thinks Vanellope is his only friend? Ralph's obsessiveness causes him to make the most stupid and insane decisions in this movie. The first of many being when he decides to, 1, go into Sugar Rush during live arcade hours when he should be in his game. I mean, this was a huge point in the first movie. You can't just leave your game while the arcade's open. They'll think it's broken. But not only does he do that, no, he also goes into Vanellope's game while someone is playing the game. And on top of all that, he does it just to create a random side racetrack that he could have done any other time. Like, how stupid is Ralph? You know, honestly, I shouldn't even ask that. The writers of this movie have little to no faith in his intelligence, obviously. Vanellope is also a complete idiot too, I should mention. She should know full well that driving on this custom track by Ralph will ruin the game and cause the real-world people to think that it's broken. But she does it anyways. And you want to hear the greatest part about all this? Despite both Ralph and Vanellope being equally guilty in the breaking of Sugar Rush, Vanellope basically gets off scot-free, and Ralph is the one who has to carry all the blame for the rest of the movie. I mean, isn't it obvious that Vanellope is also guilty? This movie actually has like an agenda against Ralph or something. I should also mention that Litwack, the arcade owner, is also a bit of an idiot. I mean, if the steering wheel doesn't smoothly slide back on, then pushing it with all your might is not going to get it to go back on. It's just gonna break the wheel. I mean, what did he expect to happen? Oh, and you know how Ralph is so stupid in this movie that he can't even make logical decisions anymore? Well, guess what? Not only can he not do that, he can't even understand basic English anymore. When one of the children clearly says eBay, he somehow hears it as e-boy.
On eBay!
Really? We're just gonna get another wheel from the e-boy.
What? This is not the only time he will misunderstand basic English. No. This happens quite a few times, actually. So now Sugar Rush gets unplugged and Vanellope is out of a home. Of course, this obviously makes her sad, and, you know, Ralph, being the good friend he is, should immediately want to go and comfort Vanellope and tell her how everything's going to be all right. Nope!
I'm thinking we make a fort up here, or like a yurt.
Ralph is too in love with himself, apparently, now, that he doesn't even care about Vanellope's feelings. Just going on and on about how much fun they're still gonna have, and that none of this really matters. It'll all be fixed in the end. I mean, the gall of the writers to not only make Ralph into a stupid idiot, but to also make him selfish and insensitive too. It's like whoever wrote this movie just really hated Ralph as a character and wanted to make him into the worst possible human being. And on a side note, slightly less egregious, but I have to bring it up anyways, it's more of a nitpick, but I find that the animation on the Nicelanders looks almost a bit too smooth and lacks that low frame rate style that they had in the original movie. Maybe it's just me, but they seem a bit off in their movements. But like I said, that's really just a nitpick compared to all the other stuff that I've not only already talked about, but all the stuff yet to come. Also, did I mention that the comedy in this movie is terrible and rarely ever funny?
It is new, it is different, and therefore we should fear it.
I'll mention if there's anything good, but the majority of it is not even worth bringing up at all because it's pretty cringe stuff. A prime example of the comedy not being very good in this movie is actually Felix and Calhoun, who are pretty much completely sidelined in this movie and only exist to make bad jokes about parenting for some reason. Oh, well, actually, there is one other scene that Felix is involved in other than the stupid parenting joke stuff. The e-boy scene. scene. There are several scenes in this movie that could be contenders for the top 10 stupidest scenes in cinematic history, but this one might just take the cake. Maybe not of all stupid scenes in cinematic history, but of the stupid scenes in this movie, I mean. First, we get more of Ralph being a completely insensitive jerk idiot, trying to shove the blame off his shoulders as much as possible in what he says.
You know, I can't help but think this whole mess is somehow partially my
greetings,
as
soldier.
well as completely
Welcome to me on the
somehow
shop.
not
Please,
understanding
take a look at
Vanellope's feelings at all, which doesn't make any sense, of course, as I already mentioned. But then, on top of all that, they had to go and give us Felix randomly saying, "You boy."
Ew, boy.
Which, you know, no one says that. I've never heard a single person in my entire life ever utter the words, "you boy." It's such a forced manner that Ralph would connect it to his nonsensically misunderstood e-boy. I mean, first of all, he should have just clearly heard that they said eBay, but of course he had to somehow misunderstand that just so that when Felix inexplicably says, "you boy," that he'll recognize his nonsensical misunderstood e-boy as being what Felix is somehow saying, and then connect that back to eBay, which convinces him to go to the internet. This has to be one of the most contrived reasons for a character doing anything in any movie ever. I mean, the entire rest of the plot of this movie doesn't happen unless Ralph mishears eBay as e-boy and Felix randomly says, "you boy." I mean, we're what, like 15 minutes into the movie at this point? Of an hour and 35 minutes? Oh dear. Save me now. It only gets worse. Before Ralph and Vanellope actually go to the internet, though, I just want to mention another minor nitpick. Just the fact that they trick Surge Protector so easily. I mean, is he really that thick? Maybe, kind of, but they're just pushing it a little. I mean, it's obvious they're trying to get into the internet by the fact that they're walking in this general direction. He's not even slightly suspicious of this. But, you know, it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things, I guess. But you know what does matter? The fact that Ralph is randomly also a coward now, too, just to add on top of all those negative traits. Since when the chibi Litwack appears right in front of him, he just jumps back like a coward and is like, "Ooh, gremlin!"
Ah, that's a gremlin! Stay away, it's a gremlin!
What? Let's just move on. Oh, but don't even get me started on a product placement in this movie. It's absolutely everywhere. You can barely go 2 minutes without seeing a new product pop up. I'm sure Disney was swimming in money from all the deals they made with all these companies.
Am I really gonna defy this trade for money? Yes, I am!
But boy, does it only make this movie harder to watch. I mean, sure, it's the internet. Of course there's gonna be lots of products everywhere, but the degree to which they shove some of them in your face is pretty ridiculous. Another thing that's just about as unbearable as all the advertisements is just how cringy and outdated some of the references and memes in this movie are. I mean, it's a pretty bad idea to reference internet memes in a movie in the first place, since most of them will only last maybe a year at most before people stop using them and they become completely outdated and forgotten. And then people look back at them and think, "Yeesh, why did we ever think that was funny?" And that's exactly how I feel looking back at all those scenes in this movie. Especially the Chewbacca mom reference. That one's extremely painful. What were they thinking? Oh, and another thing you shouldn't get me started on is Ralph somehow mistaking Google for goggles. Remember when I said he wouldn't understand basic English sentences as a theme for this movie? Oh, but thank goodness we've at last reached something positive. Since I actually do like Nose more, he is actually a pretty funny character, and the way he tries to finish everyone's sentences is actually pretty hilarious. Also, the 2D animation on his eyes is pretty cool too, I'll admit. But alas, he's only here for a few minutes, and then he pops up back at the end, but he's not really very good at the end, so, you know, this is pretty much the only good scene with him in the movie, so relish it while you can. Oh dear, we've reached yet another insanely stupid scene in the form of the auction scene at eBay. And before you say anything, let me just clarify something. Even though there's only 30 seconds left when they arrive, it's very obvious that what they're betting on uses real money. First of all, because Litwack said so earlier in the movie. How much? That's more than this game makes in a year. And second of all,
here at Grocery Outlet, we have unbeatable prices for all your favorite wines. And this week only, save even more with our 20% off wine sale. We always have the best wine selection, offering hundreds of wines that cater to any occasion. Whether you're hosting a party or lounging at home for a cozy night in, Grocery Outlet has you covered. Every single bottle of wine in our inventory is 20% off. That's right, every single bottle. Don't wait. Our 20% off wine sale ends April 8th, only at your neighborhood Grocery Outlet.
Grocery Outlet Bargain Market.
Ralph and Vanellope should both have at least a basic understanding of how buying something works. I mean, once they had bet 10,000, they had so far beaten the only other person bidding that they had already given up. There was no reason to continue, yet they mindlessly just keep shouting larger and larger numbers for no reason. I assume this is supposed to be funny, but it's so stupid that the joke is completely lost. Oh, and you'll never guess what happens when Ralph gets to the checkout. He once again can't comprehend basic English sentences.
I'll just need a credit card number.
Sorry, what's a credit number?
Oh, and also, just to add on to the negative traits of Ralph in this movie, he's also basically a liar, and borderline tries to become a criminal at this point. He basically tries to get away with taking the wheel without paying for it, which very nearly turns him into a thief. You know, and he was going to be perfectly fine with it. He felt no moral guilt at the idea of lying. But that is nowhere near as painful as the part right afterwards, where he throws a big fat tantrum like a baby.
What? What a scam! We're so close! And we wanted that!
I could feel my soul being drained from me while watching this tantrum scene. Mercifully, one of the only other good things in this movie shows up to dull the pain slightly. Now, that being Spamley, another character I actually kind of like. His whole gimmick of running up in people's faces and shoving his ads in front of them is actually pretty clever and funny for once. Another funny detail about Spamley is the fact that he makes it out that you'll get rich playing video games, but then once Ralph and Vanellope actually show up, all his get-rich-quick schemes just amount to a few dollars. Also, I like how he's connected to the dark web, you know, considering how many shifty ads always pop up on the internet. I mean, if the rest of the movie was as clever as Family, you know, maybe it might be watchable. But alas, he's basically the exception to this nightmare. What's this? Shocker alert! Another decent scene? 2 in a row? Trust me, this won't happen again for the rest of the movie. But I do actually like this infiltration into Slaughter Race scene. The two real-life players' avatars' glitchy, funny-looking movements is actually pretty hysterical, and very accurate to similar games in real life. Actually, it reminds me a lot of Final Fantasy VIII, actually, in the way they move. The part where Ralph shows up at the door right after they say that the only person who'd be able to steal this car would have to be some sort of genius, I'll admit, that's pretty funny. And his short-lived attempts at distracting them is also pretty funny. In fact, this might be the only scene in the whole movie where Ralph is anywhere remotely close to how he was in the original movie. Of course, it only happens because he was too cowardly to run in and grab the car in the first place because, you know, he's a coward now.
Where are you going?
I am scared.
I get it.
I don't get it.
But, you know, that aside, this scene is pretty good. Unfortunately, it ends all too quickly and we get the chase scene, which is not very good for multiple reasons. I mean, for starters, during the chase, Vanellope says, "Wow, that's so funny, and totally not a cringy curse word substitute at all." The chase itself seems fine, but the ending completely ruins it. I mean, the fact that Ralph and Vanellope don't get the car almost seems like a slap in the face to both the audience and the idea of thinking outside of the box. I mean, Ralph and Vanellope come up with this creative strategy to distract Shank and then quickly make off with the car, instead of running in head first and trying to take it from her by fighting her off. But no, we can't reward people for thinking outside of the box, because Shank is the most perfectest ever person ever. I'm sorry. I don't really like Shank. She's given absolutely no flaws whatsoever in this entire movie, and I get that she's a side character, and thus doesn't need as much depth as the rest of the characters, but they basically make her out to be the most coolest person there ever was, who's also really nice and gives out great advice too. Don't you want to be like Shank? Ah, who cares about that Ralph, idiot? He's a stupid jerk. You see why I don't like Shank? She basically only exists to make Ralph look worse. Oh, what were they thinking? Oh, and did I mention the fact that she just gets her car back at the end of the chase anyways? Makes this entire section feel completely pointless. Oh, and you want to know what makes this whole Shank car stealing scene actually even more redundant and pointless? the fact that nothing is stopping Ralph or Vanellope from winning. The writers seem to have forgotten that Ralph has this little ability that we call super strength. He could easily have just beaten up Shank and her crew and threw their cars out of the way, grabbed her car and ran with it. And I mean literally, ran while holding it above his head. And before you say anything, no, this would not be murder of any sort, since they're inside a game. And you know what happens if you are a character from that game, in the game, when you die? You just respawn. So Ralph would just be sitting him back to the respawn point. It's also not like Ralph thinks taking the car would be criminal in any way, or else he wouldn't be fine with stealing it. So this doesn't actually alter his motives in any way. If he had just beaten up Shank's crew and taken the car right here and now, the movie would be over. It's actually just that stupid. It's so stupid that it basically reduces anything positive I had to say about this scene to nothing. In fact, as far as I'm concerned, the only reason he doesn't get away with it is because, well, that would be stealing, and we can't have the main character steal something. But, you know, they're fine with Ralph doing every other possible despicable thing he might do in this movie. And besides, it's just one car. Is one car really not worth stealing to save an entire game from being permanently shut down?
Akotar would like to clarify that he does not condone stealing of any sort, and that this example is only used because it is a fictional car from a fictional video game inside of a fictional movie, and thus is not connected to such rules that would exist in real life against stealing, which are for the betterment of society. Thank you for your understanding.
In fact, Shank is actually pretty selfish for hoarding this car to herself. But of course, the movie never calls out this selfishness, therefore it isn't an actual flaw. Since in my book, a flaw has to be called out by the movie in order for it to actually count as a flaw. Well, there goes like 15 minutes of my life. Also, I should mention that this movie in general is kinda just too long. I already mentioned it's an hour and 35 minutes, which is a bit longer than your average animated movie. I mean, albeit not as long as some other animated movies like Fantasia and Moana are longer, I think. But this movie does nowhere near enough stuff in its plot to justify its runtime. I mean, like I said, this entire slaughter race scene is virtually pointless, outside of setting up Vanellope's tragically awful storyline, that is. But I mean, there's just so much time wasted, and the plot is constantly shifting what the main focus is every which way. I mean, first of all, they go to get a wheel. Oh, can't get the wheel because we don't have any money. Let's go get some money by stealing a car. Oh, well, can't steal the car. Let's go make a bunch of cringy videos. Oh, now we gotta go promote the videos because there's not enough money. Oh, what's that? Now we have the wheel, but it doesn't even matter because Vanellope wants to go off and which way. Oh, now Ralph's gotta stop her and go get a virus, but oh no, the virus has gone crazy. You get my point? Like, this whole movie is just a waste of your time, honestly. But, you know, back to where we were. Once Shank, the greatest ever, stops Ralph and Vanellope, Ralph then puts on this big pity party scene where he goes on and on about how sad it is that they couldn't get the money.
Her perfect little game broke, and it was my fault, so we're here to try to fix it.
Oh, and what's that I hear? Another negative trait to add to the Wreck-It Ralph mountain of negative traits, as now Ralph is officially an emotional manipulator too. Wow, he's such a great character in this movie. But anyways, Shank, the greatest ever, sends them off to her friend Yes to go make videos to earn money instead.
Before we get to the BuzzTube section, I would also like to mention one thing that happens right after the slaughter race part. That being that Ralph immediately vilifies and rejects Shank, despite the fact that she has basically only treated them nicely so far. She's technically responsible for incinerating the two players when they tried to take her car, but that's only because they tried to take her car. I mean, the fact that Ralph is still alive shows that Shank had mercy on him. So how come Ralph is now just ignoring every single positive trait about Shank, which are pretty much the only traits we've been shown so far of Shank, since as we know, she must be portrayed as perfect in order to make Ralph look even worse. But Ralph's judgmental reaction is so absurd due to the fact that it goes against the very themes and messages of the original movie. Not judging people based on what they look like, their position in life, or any sort of disability that they might have was literally the entire point of the original movie. So Ralph being this judgmental is one of the most out of character things in this entire movie.
You have allowed this Dark Lord to twist your mind until now you have become the very thing you swore to destroy.
Now where was I? Oh yes.
the BuzzTube section. And oh boy, do I have a lot to say on this section. First of all, it kind of baffles me that they had to go and make up a video sharing platform called BuzzTube instead of, just using YouTube. Oh, wait, never mind. They did this obviously because the way that Ralph earns his money in this movie does not at all match with how YouTube works on any functional level. This movie is outright deceptive in how it treats the ability to earn money online by creating videos. First and foremost, it is absolutely absurd to earn $27,000 in 8 hours. That is straight up impossible. Actually impossible. I would just outright give that a 0.00000 chance of ever happening. The biggest problem is that even if Ralph made a ton of videos in this short time frame, which is also highly questionable how he could do such a thing, but also is able to near instantly become famous online. What? This is actually just insulting to all the content creators on sites like YouTube who spend months or even years building up their channel to a point where they could even earn money in the first place, much less $27,000. Oh, and did you know that the amount of money that you earn from sites like YouTube is nowhere near enough to reach $27,000? Not even in a whole year. In fact, you'll be lucky if you earn half that much in a year, much less 8 hours. Additionally, on top of all of that, the types of videos that Ralph are making are not even very high quality videos. Every once in a blue moon, one of these videos blows up on YouTube or TikTok or something, but even then, they're all really short. And I should add that the shorter your video is, the less money you get. Why is that? Because the amount of money you earn is based on runtime. The combination of views plus runtime is what makes you the most money. Even if you get like 10 million views on like a 1-minute video, it probably won't even translate to that much in the end. But getting 10 million views on a 30-minute video, well, that's a completely different story. But like I said in the first place, it's not likely that all of Ralph's videos are gonna blow up like they do in the movie. It's actually outrageous that there are 3 people in an office watching Ralph videos at the same time. Aren't they supposed to be working? Surely Ralph is not so popular that everyone in the whole world wants to watch Ralph videos. Oh, and the insults to actual real-life content creators go even further, by the way, as this movie basically treats the idea as earning a bunch of money online as something that's easy, a way to cheat the system, which is downright despicable. It's a slap in the face to all the hard-working content creators on sites like YouTube who put hours and days, weeks even into their videos. I mean, I know for sure that I don't just pop out a video every single day with no effort, and it's all this effort that makes it so crushing when your video doesn't do so well, but all the more rewarding when people do actually watch it. And like I said, you're probably not even gonna earn that much money anyways. Cheat the system, my foot. Oh, and did I even mention, yes, it's supposed to be an algorithm, but it's a misunderstanding of how algorithms actually work. I mean, in the movie, we see her like swiping videos like she's deciding who's gonna watch the videos or if no one's gonna watch them. But that's not how algorithms work. Every video is always given a chance. To use the YouTube algorithm as my main example, is that the YouTube algorithm looks at a video and compares it to similar videos that are targeting a similar audience. It then finds those audience members who watched similar videos and shows the video to them. And if those audience members actually clicked on the video and watched it a lot, it then pushes it to even more people. But if nobody watched it in its first test, then it gets buried and not watched by many people. So it's not a matter of deciding whether the video will be watched or not. How well the video does depends on how good its thumbnail and the quality of the content is that gets people watching it. It's more about whether people actually choose to watch the video or not about whether YouTube decided it would get viewed or not. Oh, and also this algorithm scene is just so bad. More Ralph being a complete head and dumb idiot. We're at a point where I'm starting to want to strangle a chicken or something. Once Ralph does finish making most of his videos, and Vanellope desires to go out and spread the news, we get one of the most painful scenes in this entire movie. And I know I've called other scenes painful, but this one is really painful. They straight up imply in this scene that Ralph is actually a kid on the same level as Vanellope.
Listen to me on the show.
Oh, and you're not next to our adult.
Well, I'm bigger.
What?
He is canonically over 30 years old. This doesn't make any sense. It's like the writers just decided that he was a kid before they even started watching the movie, and thus reduced his intelligence to practically nothing because of like, he's just a kid. It actually just makes me mad. But I don't know what's worse at this point. Saying Ralph is just a kid, or the oh my Disney scenes. I think I actually started losing my mind during some of these parts. This entire segment is basically just that meme where the guy is putting the medal on himself. Except that guy is Mickey Mouse. Absolutely nothing of plot relevance happens in this entire section. It's just a way for Disney to promote their other movies that I'd much rather be watching right now. And oh my, we've at last reached the infamous Disney princess scene. The part that everyone is crazy about, and even some of the haters say it's one of the only good parts of the movie. I respectfully disagree. I find that at least half of the princesses in this scene are wildly out of character. Take Cinderella, for example. The first thing that she does is immediately smash her glass slipper to turn it into a weapon. Why? Why would she ever do this? The glass slipper is something of high sentimental value and importance. Cinderella shattering her glass slipper right here is almost like a direct insult to the original Cinderella movie, if you ask me. Or how about Belle, who they imply has been kidnapped and enslaved? Which, if you've actually watched the original Beauty and the Beast, it's clearly not the case. She chose to stay with the Beast, therefore she has not been kidnapped. And the Beast is not forcing her to do anything. She's technically his guest in quotation marks. But that means she's free to do almost anything in the castle that she wants, except go to the West Wing. So therefore, she's not enslaved either. And if the princesses aren't doing random out-of-character actions, then they're just spouting random meaningless references to their original movies, yet again, which I'd rather be watching right now. Did I even mention that half of the princesses don't even look like they should? Some of them are fine, like Snow White, Ariel, Mulan, and the CG princesses. But some of the others barely even resemble what they're supposed to look like, such as Pocahontas, Cinderella, and Tiana. If you ask me, this is just further proof that you can't replace 2D animation with 3D animation, as there are some art styles that just only work in 2D animation as opposed to 3D. Should I even bother with this line?
Do people assume all your problems got solved because a big strong man showed up?
Yes! What is up with that?
I mean, first of all, it's not even accurate. It completely discredits every important action that any of the Disney princes did in any of the princess movies previously, even if said actions were vital to defeating the villain and saving the world. Let me tell you something, movie. Having characters insult other characters and put them beneath them does not make those characters stronger. In fact, it has the exact opposite effect. It makes them more unlikable. But on top of that, it's kinda just lame. If this is Disney's idea of quote-unquote feminism, then they really need to reboot their systems, preferably back to 1998 when they released the original Mulan. Still the best feminist movie with the best strong female character that Disney has ever produced, and they haven't topped it in the 24 years since. And also, do I even need to mention how ridiculous it is that all the princesses suddenly obsess over Vanellope as soon as she shows up and she's the star of the show? Do none of them have anything better to do? And on top of all that, how come all they're doing is just gossiping, playing dress up and makeup, and doing like the most girlish things there ever was? In a pink room, no less. I thought just like 5 seconds ago they were insulting men and going on about how tough they are, but now they're being the most girly girls there ever was? Pick a side, Disney. Also insert cringe Vanellope steering wheel song, which is somehow not as bad as the song that's still yet to come. Oh, and I almost forgot, the singing into water nonsense is just another way to insult all the classics that came before this movie. It's like, for some reason they think it's dumb that the characters are looking into water to reflect upon themselves, but they completely missed the point. The characters aren't just looking into water, that's not what makes them sad. The reason they're looking into water is because it reflects them. They see themselves and question everything they've done up until this point, or what their life will mean, or their hopes and dreams and desires, whether they'll be in this position for all their life, or if they'll achieve something new and different and better. Not just that they were staring into water for no reason. Why do I even bother? It's a possible reason in this movie. Meanwhile, Ralph is off making more cringy videos, but oh no, it looks like he doesn't have enough hearts to get the money he needs. Don't worry, just go in and force people to watch your videos. If they don't want to watch the videos in their own time, just make them.
What? Give me that whole line. You know
So now we can add being obnoxious to the pile of Ralph's negative traits too. Even worse though than a lot of his other negative traits, the movie actually presents this as being a positive thing. Like he's some hero for going in and forcing other people to watch his videos and spamming them on everyone. It's hysterical too, considering we actually get clips of people being annoyed that they're forced to watch his videos, yet it's still seen as a good thing. It's like the movie can't even make up its mind as to whether this is a bad thing or a good thing. But that is somehow nowhere near as bad as the very next scene with the comment section. I mean, not only are the comments an actual joke, I mean, the insults some of these people are spewing out are so pathetic and weak. No one would be hurt in the slightest by seeing it. Maybe some people. But most people would just clearly understand that these are just trolls or idiots saying stupid things. And on top of that, what makes it even worse is that Ralph gets so emotionally hurt by these comments, despite the fact that he endured so much worse in the first movie, and that never broke him. You'd think that going through everything he had to go through in the first movie would, you know, make him stronger and harder to these types of comments about him. But no, now he's even more weak and pathetic. If someone even says the slightest thing to him, he breaks down into tears.
Rapporteur would like to clarify that he does not intend to insinuate that anyone who is emotionally moved to tears by such mean comments is weak and pathetic. And this comment is only targeted at Ralph, a character who is indeed being weak and pathetic in this instance, due to what we know about him from the prior movie. Thank you for your understanding.
He doesn't even know these people that are saying these things. The people in the original movie, he knew them personally. That means it should have hurt harder when they said those things. Yet somehow these randomos on the internet saying really weak insults gets to him, and what the people had said in the original movie doesn't. And we also have to add onto the garbage heap Yes's advice, in quotation marks, to always avoid the comments. When I hear this line, I laugh.
First rule of the internet: do not read the comments.
But not because it's hysterically funny, because it's so bad it's good. As I already mentioned, the kind of people who say these stupid things are just trolls. They're pretty easy to spot if you've been on the internet for even just a little while. And most people know to just ignore them and focus on what everyone else is saying. The fact of the matter is, most comments are actually positive or neutral. So avoiding the comments altogether will actually end up in you missing out on a lot of praise you might have received instead. And just because a comment is negative doesn't always mean it's just a troll saying mean things. Some negative comments are designed to be critical of the original creator, but not in a way where they're trying to insult them, but in a way that they're trying to improve the type of content they're making, such as saying that there was a lack of editing in a certain section of the video that made it a bit weaker. They're not trying to insult the creator by saying this. They're telling them that the content could be better if they improved a certain section. If you just ignore all these comments, your content will never become better. Yes! Basically just telling Ralph to shut himself off from the rest of the world, plug his ears with his hands, and go la 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 la. I think this line says more about Disney than it says about the internet, if you ask me. Uh-oh. It's time for Vanellope's other song, the much longer and much worser one. This song is just pure cringe in every possible way. The lyrics are bad, the visuals are way too over the top, and I don't want to sound mean, but Vanellope ain't exactly got the best singing voice either. And could someone just explain to me why a clown inexplicably drives on a bicycle into the air to say,
"Happy dreams, not creepy clown dreams,"
and then reverse bicycles off the screen out of nowhere? That is how random and stupid this entire song is. And of course, on top of all that, it's basically Vanellope just singing about how she wants to go turbo. You know, the thing that the villain of the first movie did that we're supposed to despise him for doing. You know, because he abandoned his own game because he selfishly wanted to go to another that he thought was cooler. Doesn't that sound familiar? Vanellope's motivation for wanting to go to Slaughter Race is almost entirely of clinginess or whatever with Ralph, but I'll get to more on that failed attempt at a message later. Vanellope completely ignores the fact that she's the princess of her own game. I mean, how are they supposed to run the kingdom without her? I mean, sure, they could replace her, but since every character in every game is designed specifically for that position in that game, it'll be pretty hard to replace her. On top of that, she just assumes that because there's so many racers, people can just pick other racers, and completely forgets it's the fact that she's the most popular character in the game. People are not gonna play the game if they can't play the most popular character. And on top of all of that, she doesn't even consider how it will make all the people in her own game feel if she leaves. She's just abandoning all her friends. I mean, she doesn't even say goodbye. As far as they know, she just disappeared and get a message from Ralph or something later at the end of the movie. Vanellope, she left to go live in the middle of the internet somewhere. But the main problem is, it fundamentally does not work with the already established rules set up in the first movie. In this situation, Vanellope is acting just as selfish as Turbo was. You know, just less evil. Yet, we're supposed to root for her and despise Turbo. This movie is asking you to either completely forget the entire Turbo plotline of the original movie, which, you know, is pretty hard to forget, or to just accept both storylines despite the fact that they contradict each other, basically turning you into a hypocrite. The level of writing in this movie is so atrocious. Nowhere is it better showcased than in the very next scene. How does this movie manage to get worse as it goes along? You know, the scene where Ralph spies on Vanellope and learns about the fact that she's now besties with Shank, the greatest person ever, and how she wants to live in Slaughter Race. I mean, Ralph is right to be upset that she wants to go to Slaughter Race, but not for the reasons the movie portrays, but, you know, for the aforementioned, lore-breaking reasons. But his reaction to Vanellope calling Shank her friend is so absolutely absurd, it boggles the mind. Ralph so absolutely refuses to accept the fact that Vanellope could ever be friends with anyone other than himself for, unknown reasons, that he outright says she must have been brainwashed.
No, she's been brainwashed.
I know you wish things were different. I wish things were different. But they ain't.
I can't help but feel good. I can't help but feel fine.
No, she's been brainwashed. That's what this is.
When I heard this on my most recent watching, I simply had to pause the movie and stop watching for a moment. Just so I could go and rant to someone about how bad and stupid this is. Answer me this, Ralph. Who is brainwashing Vanellope? You were with her the entire first trip to Slaughter Race, which means that the only thing that could have compelled her to return to Slaughter Race was her own choice. With the bare minimum of a logical deduction, you can deduce that Vanellope has not been brainwashed. But no! Ralph has been reduced to -5 IQ in this movie. Basic thinking skills are not on his list of abilities. Oh, and also, this is the point in the movie where Ralph quite literally becomes the villain. Isn't that so great? That Ralph is the villain? You see the problem with this? One of the whole main themes of the original movie is that despite Ralph being a villain, he's not a bad guy, and that people's first impressions and preconceptions of people aren't always right, that there's always more to them than shown on the surface. Oh, but of course, let's just throw all that out the window. He's now the bad guy for real. They basically just, undone everything about Ralph in the original movie at this point. There's nothing left about what made him good. Every element of his character has been torn apart, dredged through the mud, and thrown in a fiery dumpster. The writers of this movie should be ashamed of this abomination they have created. We're at a point where I don't even feel like giving out the minor compliments every now and again. But, if I have to, I don't mind the dark net area. It's actually kind of funny to see characters go to the dark web in a Disney movie. But of course, this is a very short-lived compliment section. As you know, the usual very next scene ruins everything. I mean, this movie has so little faith in Ralph's intelligence that they make him hesitate when he's asked if he is stupid.
Are you stupid?
And oh dear, it's the part where they introduce the insecurity virus.
Arthur's what I call an insecurity virus.
Quite possibly the worst thing in this entire movie. Outside of Ralph's characterization, of course. I mean, it's painfully on the nose. Absolutely no subtlety whatsoever. The whole insecurity, clinginess messaging of this movie completely fails in the first place because every character is so stupid. But they really, really love to hammer you over the head with these ideas throughout the entire movie. It's like they assumed all the audience members would be 5-year-olds or less. Oh, and did you know that the stupidity of this movie's insecurity message goes so far that they actually straight up retcon Penelope's glitch to be something that only happens because she is insecure, as the virus copies a glitch as an insecurity and distributes her insecurity to other parts of the race, making it so that her glitch is literally only her insecurities.
Insecurity detected.
Alright, who's responsible for this change? Tell me where they are. I just wanna talk. If you don't know why I'm so upset, it's because Vanellope's glitch in the original movie was partially supposed to be a subtle representation of disabled people. And part of the message of the original movie was that Vanellope could still be great despite having a glitch. And it was wrong for the others to treat her as lesser for having it. But now, this movie has decided to alter her glitch to now represent everything negative about her. So now her glitch is seen exclusively as a bad thing that needs to be cured. Do you see the problem? This is insulting not only to the characters, but the audience members who were inspired by the positive messages of Vanellope in the original. And oh boy, is the breakup scene that comes next also extremely painful to watch. Both characters decide to crank the selfish meter to 100 and end their friendship over a stupid misunderstanding. This movie is running on an extra special stupid fuel at this point. Also, Vanellope has to remind us that she won't be missed, but I already pointed out that that's completely illogical and she will obviously be missed if she leaves. And of course, on top of that, she adds to add to the stupidity by saying that a friend would never do something like Ralph did, yet simultaneously refuses to hear his side of the argument.
You will not follow me.
Penelope, please.
A friend would never do what you did. Never.
How do you know he didn't do it because he cared if you don't even hear out his side of the argument? And of course, Ralph is a complete idiot, the usual for this movie, by sending the virus in the first place. Not a great friend. But on top of that, he didn't try to play dumb, like he didn't know this was gonna happen.
I didn't mean for it to happen like this. It's not supposed to be this bad.
No, and also something bad happening, and that just confirms that Ralph is actually stupid, because that's what they implied in the earlier scene. Ready for another slap to the face from this movie? Well, here it comes in the form of Ralph's medal from Vanellope broken in two. This is supposed to be a thematic representation of their friendship breaking, but it only broke for stupid and forced reasons, so this just comes off as the writers giving us the finger for ever liking the two as friends in the first place. Also, are we supposed to feel bad for Ralph here? His actions are so stupid that it's impossible to feel sorry for this happening to him.
Let me play a sad song for you on the world's smallest violin.
Calm down, Rockotar. Calm down. You're almost at the end of this dumpster fire. Just gotta make it through the idiotic final battle.
Ralph's insecurities being used as a virus doesn't actually make any logical sense. While I hate what they imply with Vanellope's glitch, at least her having a glitch makes sense for a virus. But how can Ralph's personal feelings be scanned and copied? That doesn't even make any sense. The virus is supposed to find insecurities in the system, not personal insecurities of people. This is just nonsensical drivel so that the painfully awful finale can happen. Oh, and speaking of, we've at last reached the horrendous finale where the army of Ralph's zombie viruses are unleashed.
Please, no! No! No!
Do I even have to say anything? Not only is this so far over the top in this movie's failed attempt at its cleanest message, but it's just plain stupid. Ralph has been reduced so far from how he was in the first movie that he is not only the villain of this film, but an army of mindless, obsessive zombies as well.
YouTube Premium is ad-free YouTube and exclusive access to all things VIP, so you can superfan from your sofa. YouTube Premium. It's way more than ad-free. Try 1 month on us.
Why, Disney? Why? And this movie is so unsubtle and ungraceful with its messaging that they feel the need to not only smash you over the head as we've discussed, but also have Nosemore literally explain the message point blank to Ralph's face, while also demeaning and insulting him further, because we haven't had enough of that yet. And this next part both makes me mad and confuses me. Ralph asks Nosemore what to do to get rid of the viruses, and Nosemore tells him and Vanellope to lead them through an antivirus gate or something. But guess what? They literally never do this! Why bring this up as seemingly the only way to defeat the viruses if that's not even what they're going to do? Wait, let me slow down. I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Oh, and did you know in the very next scene, yes! Also has to take a jab at Ralph, just for good measure. Also, later in the same scene, Ralph himself repeats the same point-blank, hammer-over-the-head explanation of this movie's bad excuse for a theme.
From up here, I can see how I do come across as needy and clingy and self-destructive, like Nosemore said.
Don't you get it, audience? Don't be clingy, or else you too will become a mindless zombie virus. Get it? And of course, I have to take the stupid levels to 110 with a giant Ralph monster. Though, to be fair, the part where Ralph fights him for a bit is slightly more entertaining than the other 99% of this movie. Obviously, nowhere near good enough to improve my opinion in any meaningful way. Let's talk about how Ralph and Vanellope actually do stop the viruses. Since the movie just completely forgets about the gate thing Nosemore said. Thematically speaking, this is not the worst way to beat the viruses. However, that would be assuming that the theme was any good in the first place. Well, actually, let me clarify something in case I'm getting off the wrong idea. I actually like the idea of this theme, that clinginess can ruin friendships and other relationships. It's an important lesson that people need to learn, and using this as the theme of a Disney movie is actually a good idea on paper. Note that I said on paper. This movie has thus far completely failed in its theme because it's so over the top in how it portrays this clinginess, and that they have to greatly reduce the intelligence of characters like Ralph to even put them in a position where their friendship is at risk. And, as I've mentioned about 1,000,000 times, this movie only knows how to relay its theme with sledgehammer to the face tactics. I wonder if all the countless times I've mentioned how unsubtle this theme is in and of itself a reference to how unsubtle the themes of this movie are. And with all that explained, let me tell you the even bigger problem with how Ralph and Vanellope beat the viruses. It doesn't make any logical sense. The virus only scanned and copied Ralph's insecurities, meaning that there shouldn't be anything positive in those viruses. No redeeming qualities. So how come it listens to reason and just disappears? It should only be possible to get rid of the viruses by leading them through the gate, as that would simply erase them. Ralph already saw the error of his ways and admitted his problem, in a very blunt and unsubtle scene. So what is the problem with just deleting the viruses through the gate? Was the climax just not epic enough yet? I'm done trying to make sense of the senselessness of this movie. Whilst I was editing this video, I realized another fact about this movie that's terrible. A fact so bad that I couldn't not include it in this analysis. I don't even know how I missed it the first time I was writing my notes and recording this video. But that fact is that the internet is massively damaged by Ralph's actions with the virus. But the movie doesn't even acknowledge this at all. What? I mean, they basically completely wiped out entire websites. And yet, as soon as the Ralph viruses disappear, the movie completely forgets that any destruction whatsoever happened at all. Additionally, the fact that the movie just ignores all the destruction caused by the Ralph monsters makes the entire final battle feel completely pointless and inconsequential. Why does it matter if all these buildings and internet sites get destroyed if they're not even going to acknowledge that they got destroyed at all? And on top of that, nothing bad happens to Ralph because of his actions. He basically gets away with unleashing this virus on everyone. No repercussions whatsoever. Sure, he didn't intend to unleash this virus on the internet, but he is still the one responsible for letting it happen. Is no one upset at him? Does Ralph not feel guilty about what he let happen? Should he not be spending all his free time trying to make up and repair all the damage he caused? Why does this just get completely ignored? Well, at least you were rewarded with one of the only funny jokes in this movie. And no, not the princess's rescue, although I do get a small laugh out of the Prince Naveen appearance. No, I'm talking about the hilarious Spamley save failure, the only joke to actually get an audible laugh from me.
Park it right here, Ralph. Your old pal JT Spamley's got you. Wow, that didn't work.
And of course, this is the part where Vanellope decides that she is going to go turbo full time. No one will call her out, no consequences. Just forget the original movie even existed, please. And thus, Ralph returns back to the arcade, and we get to see Felix and Calhoun again. Those two great characters from the first movie who were reduced to lame parenting jokes at the beginning and end of this movie and thrown in the trash for the rest of the runtime. Oh, how badly I wish I could say I'm happy to see them again, but alas, they only exist for the bad parenting jokes, so it's not really that great to see them. Though I suppose they at least avoided being horribly assassinated like Ralph and Vanellope, and to end off the movie, just a couple random scenes with Ralph, and then he tells Vanellope about everything he's done, nothing particularly special, just typical epilogue fluff. And with that, the nightmare finally ends.
I'd do anything.
Surprise! We got a dog.
Kid. Aw, new pet? You're gonna need all the things. Let's go to PetSmart. Come on. Watch your heads and tail. We've got literally anything you need, from the big things to the little things. And make
Finally.
But let us just conclude everything we have learned from this movie and why it is the worst sequel ever made in the history of sequels. Probably, unless there's a sequel that's worse that I've not seen yet. But this is the worst one I've ever seen.
A little while back, I made a video talking about why I thought...
When I first learned that Pixar was making a sequel to Inside Out, I was quite interested. Some people out there assumed by default that the movie would be bad just because it is a sequel. And as you know, we are currently living in the sequel and remake apocalypse.
What did you think?
My dear fella, I never doubted you for a second.
The original movie had such a great world and tons of room to expand. The movie even teased some of the possibilities that a sequel could bring. Later down the line, it was revealed that there would be new emotions, and one of them would be anxiety. This reveal had me even more intrigued, and seemed to prove my point that there was room for interesting ideas in the sequel. So I stayed optimistic about the film up to its release. And then I went to see it in theaters. As much as I had just hoped the movie would be at least good, and not much more than that, considering Pixar's recent output has been pretty shoddy.
What's happening here?
I did not expect to come out of that movie with tears in my eyes and holding the opinion that it is the best sequel Pixar has ever made. Yes, even better than Toy Story 2, a movie I have claimed in the past was a perfect sequel. In fact, this may even be the very best movie Pixar has ever made, period. Though it is a close call between this one and the second. And to those who have seen my channel before, you may know that I made a 45-minute video explaining why Monsters, Inc. is a masterpiece filled to the brim with clever writing. And I hold this movie to the same level as that. Dare I say, I would even compare this movie to Walt Disney's Pinocchio. Now, to some who don't fully appreciate that movie, it may not sound like high praise, but I assure you, if I compare a movie positively to Pinocchio, that is amongst the highest praise I can give a movie. This movie is amazing and special for very similar reasons as Pinocchio is to me. Because this movie covers a lot of deep and emotional themes, and it does so with incredible depth, while also telling a great story in a creative world that remains constantly entertaining with good humor and likable characters. And well, because I felt so strongly about this movie, I had to make a video on it. So, this here is why I believe Inside Out 2 is one of Pixar's greatest masterpieces, and how it left an impact on me personally. One of the first things I love about good sequels is that they expand upon the ideas and world of the first movie. Inside Out 1 had so many amazing and clever ideas for making abstract concepts of the mind into a literal world where characters lived and interacted. And it managed to do so flawlessly, in that everything in this world felt right and connected to the other elements perfectly. And while I always knew there was room for even more ideas to expand upon this world of the mind, this movie blew me away with just how many more ideas it managed to add. In fact, there are so many new ideas that they are often the main things the movie focuses on. and yet they are also so well integrated into the world that it never feels like we have abandoned anything from the first movie. In fact, I prefer they focus on new ideas, since it shows they have confidence in what they are doing, and not just relying on things we, the audience, already like. Just a few clever examples being the Vault of Dark Secrets. A literal vault, of course, run like a prison, so that Riley's dark secrets don't get out and everyone knows what they are, which also gives us some of the best new side characters, more on them in a moment. The Stream of Consciousness, a literal stream, of course, that shows what Riley is thinking about in that moment. Another solid addition that just, makes sense. There's also the Rumor Mill, or the Sarcasm, which lend themselves very well to clever. There's a brainstorm with light bulb ideas flying around, and the best idea, referred to as a big idea.
That's a big idea.
Is just a giant light bulb. I mean, I could go on and on, but most importantly of all is the belief system, which gives Riley the view of herself in the world, making her who she is. And I love that the beliefs come from her memories and how this ties into the plot. Additionally, when it comes to this idea, I love the way in which Riley's memories and firmly held beliefs about herself make, in a sense, who she truly is, or at the very least, who she thinks she is. And this is all very important stuff to remember, as it's very easy for us to build an idea of who we really are based on our experiences and what we thought about that, leading us to come to certain conclusions about things and how we start acting in the future. And while a lot of this, to a certain extent, is true about who we actually are, our minds can be very selective about the things that we think about ourselves, because we tend to only think of positive things when it comes to telling ourselves who we actually are. Because why would we want to admit some negative truth about ourselves? And I think it really fits well with Joy's attempt to get rid of all the bad memories so that they can't create any negative beliefs about Riley in the moment. And, of course, all of this may come back to bite her later on. And it's not just these ideas themselves and their execution, but how well they fit for a sequel. Everything here feels so much bigger in scale and theme, in the same way that Toy Story 2 does to an immaculate degree. Just everything, every single idea in this movie is so good. Another thing I really like about this movie is how all the main characters from the first movie get to go on the adventure through Riley's mind together. And that when one of them does have to go back up to the main console room, they haven't be sad, since she, along with Joy, already had the most screen time in the first movie. This way, she still gets to do something important, but we see so much more of the characters who got less screen time than before.
Perfectly balanced, as all things should be.
And as for the other three non-main characters of the previous movie, they are all... I like how they contrast Joy in a similar but different way to Sadness in the first movie, whereas Sadness baffled Joy because she was the exact opposite of her. These three are often negative sourpusses as well, but in a much more vocal way, and it drives Joy insane, since she is trying to be hopeful while all of them keep dragging her down. I'll touch on this more later, but it adds a lot to the depth of the characters and their dynamic, as well as the themes of the movie. Although I do have to mention one minor negative in this regard. In fact, it is the only negative regarding this whole movie. The replacement of Disgust and Fear's voice actors. Now, it's not a negative because these actors did a bad job. In fact, Disgust's actress is pretty close in quality to the original, but more so, the reason they were replaced is very stupid. Basically, it just boils down to Disney being greedy and not paying their actors enough. Sadly, this does affect Fear a bit, since the new actor is not as good as the original. Like I said, not bad by any means, just not as fit for the role as the original was. And you can tell the difference.
Luck isn't gonna help us now. If she tries to use Hockey Island, it's going down.
Which is why I've recalled every hockey memory I can think of. One of these has gotta work in place of the core memory. If we can't follow the stream, we don't know where we're going. And if we don't know where we're going, we can't follow the stream! It is an endless loop of tragedy and consequence!
Still a solid character, Just wish that Disney wasn't stupid and just kept the original actor. And same for Discuss. Even though she's about the same quality as the original character, they still shouldn't have replaced her either. Now, back to the positives, which will be the whole rest of this review from now on. The animation in this movie is also really good, and while it doesn't have like the much more unique art style of like the Spider-Verse movies or Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, I think it's just really well done. Like, if you look at just small little movements of the characters and facial expressions, a lot of effort has been put into making the characters really shine, and you can see clear examples of the principles of animation being used extremely well, especially with Anxiety, whose animation is just absolutely amazing. Like, just look at a few of these examples where the artist used squash and stretch, or smear frames, or the double imaging on a single frame to show faster movement. Whoever was put in charge of animating this character deserves a promotion. Unless, of course, they're already, like, the highest lead animator position that you can get. Then in that case, they deserve a pay raise, especially because it's animation, and animators rarely ever get paid enough, especially when it comes to CGI. The music in this movie is also a very notable point for me. I mean, it's not like it's the greatest soundtrack to any movie ever, but I thought it was really effective.
Greetings, soldier. Welcome to my humble shop.
The theme of
Please take a look at my
Riley's
interest here.
itself,
And no, I don't really care which side you're on, just so long as you fill my pockets,
It
eh?
has a really lovely melody to it.
Steak and traditional dining table. We have it.
Greetings, soldier. Welcome to my humble shop. Please take a look at my interest here. And no, I don't really care which side you're on, just so long as you fill my pockets, eh?
And I love how it pops up again in several emotional moments later in the movie. Like a much sadder version when Joy realizes that she's been doing something wrong, and that it might just be impossible to permanently stop anxiety. And again during the climax, when Riley's true self appears, and all the emotions come together. And of course, Anxiety's theme is perfect for her character because it's just so unpredictable and a little bit off-putting.
Oh my gosh, I am just such a huge fan of yours, and now here I am meeting you face to face. Okay, how can I help? I can take notes, get coffee, manage your calendar, walk your dog, carry your things, watch you sleep.
Wow, you have a lot of energy.
It feels consistently unnerving and occasionally spikes, almost like a mini jump scare, since you never know when anxiety is Anyway, very good by Andrea Katzman. Oh, and also I could mention that the comedy is very good in this movie, because it is.
And then I tell Anxiety, hey, don't worry so much anymore. And she'll say, wow, Joy, I never thought of that before, thank you.
But, I mean, I always say, what am I supposed to say? That the comedy is not good in this clearly good movie. I mean, the comedy being good is part of why it's good in the first place. You know what all I'm going to say is that if the Triple Ding Dong song doesn't make an appearance in the inevitable Inside Out, you're right.
Triple Ding Dong.
We'll make this embarrassment. Get that out of here.
So, remember like a minute or two ago when I said I would talk more about the dark secrets? Well, now it's time. Oh boy! First up, Lance, the amazing video game character who Riley had a crush on, but doesn't want anyone to know. I love this guy because of just how astonishingly accurate he is to an actual video game character. I mean, his personality is slightly exaggerated for comedic effect, of course, but that's to be expected from a character whose main purpose is satirical comedy. Immediately, one thing you will notice about him is how he is only rendered at a capped resolution and frame rate to match the resolution of classic games from the 2000s era. He is especially reminiscent of the art style of games like the first two Kingdom Hearts. I wonder why Disney would want to make a video game character in their movie look like a character from Kingdom Hearts. This is a mystery we will never know the answer to, I am sure. I also love how he has a massive sword, like so many anime video game characters do. It's obvious that Cloud Strife was a big inspiration, with his spiky hair, slightly edgy personality, and of course, massive sword. Oh, and speaking of Kingdom Hearts, Cloud Strife actually appeared in that game. Once again, I think it's clear where Disney got their inspiration from. And I love it when he tries to leave the room and gets stuck on the edge of the door and has to reposition himself.
Thank you, friends. I must be leaving you.
This moment had me in stitches. Way too accurate. And lastly, his incredibly lame special move. An obvious rip at some characters in fighting games, especially some moves in Super Smash Bros. That are just so bad, you wonder why anyone would ever use them. Because it's like asking to lose. Which is another perfect reason to make Riley have him as a dark secret, since she wouldn't want people to know she'd rather pick the character who looks good than one who actually plays well. It's clear that whoever was put in charge of writing and animating this character did their research. And it shows the level of care and effort put into this movie from the team behind it. But almost more surprising than that is the other character who appears here, Bloofy, a traditionally animated dog character from a children's TV series. You know, the ones like Dora the Explorer, Blue's Clues, and Mickey Mouse Clubhouse, where they always break the fourth wall and ask the audience if they can solve some problem, usually waiting an excruciatingly long time for the answer.
So, which path leads to the glass bridge? The path on the right or the path on the left? The path on the left. Boy, we really are smart.
Bloofy is a laugh-out-loud satire on those lame kid shows. I'm not gonna lie, I do have a small soft spot for Mickey Mouse Clubhouse, but the other ones of that kind are pretty lame. The way in which he breaks the fourth wall to ask us in the audience the questions, only for it to be revealed that he is just talking to the wall, is amazing.
Uh-oh, we're gonna need your help. Can you find a way out?
Who are you talking to?
My friends. You see a key? I don't either.
I also just love how over-the-top and condescending he is, annoying the main emotions. I love how the response to him is pretty much how every child feels while watching these shows. Usually saying nothing when he asks for engagement, or telling him something obvious that he isn't doing. Well, that's how I feel anyway. I also love that he has his own Toodles/backpack-inspired, magically talking item named Pouchy, who can just produce anything the characters need out of thin air.
Everybody say, "Oh, Toodles!"
Oh, Toodles!
Everybody say, "Oh, Pouchy!"
Oh, Pouchy!
And how Anger just can't stand how stupidly obvious the choice is. Oh, and on the topic of Pouchy here, I love how, unlike other movies, this movie remembers that when the characters are in a situation, they have the ability to call on Pouchy to help them out of this situation. Usually in a situation like this, a character like Pouchy would just be assumed by most people to be a joke character who has no further use after his first appearance. But whoever wrote this scene realized that, instead of trying to come up with some contrived way to get the characters out of this situation, it would make more sense to have something the movie has already established return, thus making their escape from their situation more satisfying, because it builds off the elements already introduced, including the stream of consciousness as well.
Before adding something new, choose your magic, and I will put your setting in general. See if you can instead expand what you have. Your ability to solve problems with magic in satisfying ways directly proportional to how well the reader understands said magic.
And I like that this movie does that here with Pouchy. It just helps the movie to feel more complete and airtight. Technically, there's also a third dark secret I should also mention. A big dark figure who says nothing, but is a big help in escaping the vault. Later in the end credits, it is revealed that Riley's big bad dark secret, the one that this character is keeping hidden, is just that he burnt a hole in a rug. Which is definitely a twist. Even Joy is baffled that it isn't something worse. All of them are great additions to the movie, and I love how much variety they add to this world, and how well executed all of them are in the ideas that they are based off of. Of course, those characters are not the only ones introduced. In fact, they're probably the least important new characters. The major characters that this movie introduces are the new emotions. Envy, an emotion that always wants to be better and is jealous and, well, envious of others who are seemingly better in several ways. I love that she is tiny, representing how, when you are envious, you feel so much smaller and less important than someone else who you think is better. Envy's eyes being so large is also a nice touch, since it makes her look like she's always eyeing everything that she wants. Completely obsessed with it. Always staring at it. And I love that little, like, anime-looking effect they sometimes put on her eyes when she's really into something that she wants. Embarrassment is also here. An emotion who is just adorable. Just like how when people in real life are embarrassed, they feel so exposed and unsure what to say. Often coming off in a weirdly adorable way, which just makes them more embarrassed usually. And his design is also amazing. I love how he barely says anything, mirroring how people in real life never know what to say when they are embarrassed. Worried that if they do say something, it will just make the situation worse and embarrass them further. The hoodie outfit that he constantly tightens to hide his face and embarrassment is also a nice touch, giving us a great visual to know what he is thinking even when he isn't saying anything. His size is another great element, since an embarrassed person often feels like their errors or insecurities are on full display to the whole world, and that they are super exposed and obvious, like a giant standing out from the crowd. Say it with me, folks. The power of show, don't tell on full display here. The fact that he is the color pink also fits perfectly, since it matches the shading on a person's cheeks when they are flustered or blushing, often from embarrassment. And lastly, the small touch when he tries to fall down and hide himself, we see a tiny sliver of his bum crack. The kind of thing a person in real life would be super embarrassed about if someone pointed it out to them. Just perfect. And then there's ennui, or boredom. A character who doesn't do too much, but in an ironic twist, only makes their role even more fitting, since a bored person rarely feels the energy or enthusiasm to do anything at all. The fact that she's always on her phone and would rather activate the console with an app than actually do anything is super hilarious.
Greetings, soldier.
And I love the fact that Sadness stealing the phone from her later on causes her more panic about not having the phone to distract her than the way Sadness could use it to undo Anxiety's plans.
Ennui, where's your phone? Oh la la, my phone? Where is my phone? Seriously? This is not happening.
Oh, and speaking of a certain someone, that brings me to Anxiety, the most important character of this film, and its primary antagonist. I absolutely adore Anxiety as a villain. Not only because she is obviously relatable, but because she genuinely thinks she is doing the right thing and helping Riley. Oh, and I just have to mention this little detail here that I absolutely love. That Anxiety brings with her a bunch of luggage when she moves in, meant to represent the idea that emotions like anxiety can sometimes bring with them a lot of emotional baggage. Just a nice little touch by the animators. I like that she has an intentionally more dorky and quirky design, since it fits with the fact that she is always insecure about what other people will think of her, and how that will affect her going forward.
See? Was that so hard?
No, you're totally right. That decision's not gonna haunt us for the rest of our lives at all.
She is the part of Riley that worries the most about who she is, and a part of that is what she looks like. Deep down, some people seem to have this idea that they are ugly, in a super dorky way like Anxiety. But really, there is nothing wrong with them, and they've just been set up with too high expectations of themselves. And another detail about Anxiety that I love, as I briefly brought up before, is the movements that she's animated with, and how they just make her so on edge all the time, zipping around here and there and everywhere, trying to fully grasp everything that's happening in the situation. And even when she seems like she's calm, she could just suddenly snap at any moment and jolt into a completely different position. In a sense, Anxiety is a twist villain, but not in the sense that she is a twist villain to us, the audience, but a twist villain to herself. Since, like I said, She only acts in the ways she genuinely thinks will be best for Riley.
That is not Riley.
I know. It's a better Riley.
A Riley who won't be alone next year.
We build her a new sense of self. A brand new her.
Just look at her first scene. She's trying to stop Riley from embarrassing herself and ruining a perfect first impression with the girl that she looks up to. And though she is trying her best to prepare for the worst outcome, she occasionally goes too far. She's very controlling and wants to stop others from interfering. She lives in constant fear of what might happen, and in a different way from fear, who is more afraid of what is currently happening. Anxiety is afraid of the things that might never even happen, and this makes her worried. She hates that nobody else except her seems to care. Her outlook on the world is so negative because she thinks that she's the only one actually trying to do the best thing.
I am truly sorry. I was so looking forward to working with you guys.
What do you think you're doing?
Riley's life is more complex now. It requires more sophisticated emotions than all of you.
She is so blinded by her attempts to create the best case scenario that she ends up shutting everyone out, both the emotions on the inside and the real people on the outside. All of these elements combine to make her one of the best characters in any Pixar movie. I love how the new emotions in this movie represent the idea of a person becoming more complex as they get older. People think not just in basic ways, but mixed ways. It's a perfect expansion of the mixed emotion memories of the person it is thinking. The downside, of course, is that we as people often start to overthink things as we get older. Take, for example, the scene near the beginning of the movie where Riley is talking with her friends in the car and suddenly goes into an extreme focus on a minor detail. This scene is great for multiple reasons. Firstly, it is a great way to show us how well Riley knows her friends, that she can tell that they are thinking of something and they aren't saying just by speaking their expressions.
Enhance 224 176. Track right. Zoom in. Right there.
So?
She's hiding something. But what?
Secondly, and less positively, it shows us how obsessive Riley is becoming, in that she is already starting to worry too much. She thinks that if her friends are keeping something from her, then she will be left out and potentially left behind.
I love humans. All of us seeing patterns in things that aren't there.
And not making things any better is that her theories, in a sense, are right, since her friends are going to be missing. It really taps into that relatable worry that when everyone you know starts to leave, you will have no one, because at that time, there is no one who will be there to listen to you and spend time with you. Well, other than your parents, but everyone knows that just isn't the same thing. I think it's also very important the fact that Riley is right about her assumptions here in this scene, because it reinforces anxiety's perspective. She continues to think throughout the rest of the movie that she has to continuously be afraid of these things happening, because in the past, her worries have come true. And that's one of the ultimate traps that so many people in real life fall into. It's like if you're a gambler and you keep trying over and over again to win at a casino, just because once in a while someone does actually win. And you don't want to stop trying to win because you've already put so much into trying to win up to this point. The same thing applies to anxiety. You know that you're going to win, or at least trying to win your life. And so you just can't stop constantly trying to think of the worst case scenario. That way, if something does inevitably go wrong, you'll know that you were right. And in some weird, twisted kind of way, I guess that makes people feel better about themselves, that they knew it was coming, but it doesn't really do much to actually make their situation any better. And if anything, they've probably made it worse along the way. Things only get worse for Riley in the very next scene, when she runs into Val for the first time. She is immediately faced with a situation she has never had to deal with before. Judgment. Or rather, the fear of judgment. Considering that Val is Riley's hero, she wants to make a good impression on him, since being disliked by your hero would be the worst feeling ever. Just ask Syndrome. And so Riley becomes anxious for the first time. And here we see how anxiety tries to constantly stop Riley from saying stupid stuff, usually caused by the other patients just letting her be herself or express her opinions. You know, terrible stuff like that. This is the big problem with looking up to someone. It makes you value their opinions and thoughts to such a high degree that those very thoughts start to become your own, even if they are not really what you truly believe. The fear of looking bad or not fitting in with those you want to accept you can be a dangerous and damaging mindset, since thinking this way, you are likely to act differently just to receive acceptance by a group, and regardless of what you actually think, saying these things just to fit in and acting a certain way will eventually change who you are and how you act. Often this is for the worse because it makes you into a fake version of yourself. Your thoughts are no longer based on a foundation you built, but the word of others. And when you only believe a thing because it is what you are told, then is it really something you believe? Because Riley is afraid of not fitting in, she rejects the things she actually likes deep down. And sadly, because her friends refuse to change like her to fit in, she begins rejecting them. In her mind, the thought of being cool and fitting in is more appealing. But she doesn't realize yet how important a genuine friendship or relationship is. Because being in a group that only accepts you because you think what they think and say what they say will never allow you to create a deep bond, because both people must connect on a genuine level for that to work. And the fake nature of fitting in makes you less special and thus less genuine. Sometimes acceptance and fitting in aren't worth it if it is actively making you a worse person in order to do so. Oh, and if you don't mind me begging, if even a couple of you guys could press the like and subscribe buttons as ferociously as anxiety pushes the buttons on this console here, I would be eternally grateful. Anxiety at this point has become too afraid of failure that she considers Riley's old emotions, and thus a representation of her old self, to be a threat to her future, and so she literally bottles up those emotions to get rid of them. A clever, if somewhat unsettled metaphor. And because her emotions are suppressed, Riley herself seems more cold and emotionless. And whenever she does emote, it is always something negative or fake. Riley's mindset of trying to fit in and make sure she becomes notable and is remembered is primarily driven by the way anxiety has taken over her mind. She has essentially caused Riley to assume the worst and never think in basic emotions. Her happiness is fake because her true joy has been suppressed in order to simply fit in, to pretend to like things she doesn't actually care about. This leads to boredom or envy, since she wishes she enjoyed these other things more than she actually does. All of this meaning she is not truly happy, but in a tragic twist of fate, all anxiety seems to want is future Riley's happiness, since that is all she is ever obsessing over. One of this movie's best and most clever scenes is when the main emotions find out that anxiety has hijacked Riley's imagination and is using it against her. There are multiple layers to what makes this so great. First of all, it is a logical thing for anxiety to do, since she genuinely believes that attempting to plot out every negative possibility for Riley's future will help her and stop her from making mistakes. And secondly, it's genius that she uses the area of her imagination to do this. When we are young, all we usually think about are fun things in our imagination. They say the most creative geniuses on the planet are children, because they don't try to think with logic or reasoning the same way we do. They just let their minds flow like a river, and their imaginations spark ideas that the minded to think of.
Truly wonderful the mind of a child is.
But sadly, when we get older, we tend to use our imaginations more and more to think of thoughts relating to our lives in the moment. And even more so, in the future. Since most people, especially these days, tend to lean more pessimistic than positive. That means thinking about all the horrible things that could go wrong in the future. The big problem with this mindset is that it makes people view the entire world around them more negatively. By always assuming the worst, it makes people into black holes of enthusiasm and joy. And worse, by always thinking like this, you start to feel like things are always going wrong. You focus on every small thing that goes wrong in your life, and you forget to count your blessings along the way.
Anxiety has got you all chained to desks, drawing nightmares, but you don't have to take it anymore.
Only through the acceptance that the future cannot be predicted can a person find relaxation and lift an unnecessary weight off their shoulders. It is hard, though, because we are so afraid that if we do not think about the future and consider all possibilities, that we will be vulnerable, and in that moment, we stop trying to prepare for the future. That is when something will go wrong. But the constant need to be prepared makes us act differently than we normally would. It makes us into perfectionists, and anyone who has seen my Azula video would know that being a perfectionist can have dire side effects. Attempting to stop yourself from ever making a mistake and succeeding as soon as possible, and the worry that you will never get given another chance by the world, it can make you into a worse person. The way Riley's new logic has changed her has made her think less about others and more about herself, because in her perfectionist view, she is always the priority. She is losing her friends and is genuinely missing a limited opportunity because of her irrational fear driven by her obsession with the future. Around this part where Riley is trying to fit in with the others and accidentally makes the horrible mistake of mentioning her favorite band, when the sarcasm first appears in Riley's mind, I love the detail that it tears apart its surroundings to create this giant gap there. And it's perfectly timed with how Riley first uses this sarcasm, because she's not using it in just a joking way, but to hide what she truly thinks. And so in a sense, she's burying her true self and creating a tear in the very fabric of who she is on the inside, which is also, you know, another lovely detail. Oh, and you know what else is lovely? The bit where anxiety goes to bring some more of her anxious memories down to Riley's belief system, and it notices the broccoli that the main characters were using to ride down the stream of consciousness. Now, this may not seem like anything notable, but it's actually a great way to foreshadow the fact that the sarcasm leads directly to Riley's core memory belief system area. You know what I'm trying to say? Since, you know, the broccoli fell into the chasm. And later on, the characters themselves will fall into the chasm with all the bad memories, and it will leave them here. And so, because we already saw the broccoli going here, it's not out of nowhere that the characters end up there because they fell into the chasm here. You know what I'm trying to say? Anyway, I thought it was a nice touch. It's also very worth noting, in my opinion, how Riley always seems to appear happy with her supposedly new friends, but it's a detail that I actually find to be extra sad, because people rarely ever appear as broken as they actually are on the inside, on the outside, always trying to appear happy because they don't want to make someone else sad, but in the process they end up going through all these struggles without the help they actually need, because people think that they're more okay than they actually are. And it's especially sad for Riley here, because she thinks she needs to appear happy to be accepted by this group, when she's not really as happy as she actually appears to be. And another small but very important detail that's easy to miss, that I think has a lot of meaning, is this really brief scene right here.
You'll do great.
Respawn by Razor. Will our moons fix your skill diff? It's worth a shot.
Just be yourself. Did you hear that? He could become a firehawk, like, tomorrow.
Because what Val is doing right here is giving Riley some actual, genuine advice here. But Riley just completely misses it. She is so focused on the idea of doing well and becoming a part of this team in the future that she essentially just ends up ignoring this advice. And it shows just how easily we can be caught up in our own minds, that we can miss obvious stuff right in front of our faces, especially when people are trying to help us. And it goes completely over our heads because we have already decided what we're going to do, even if it's not the right thing to do. Also, if you think about it, Valentina and her friends are actually pretty nice to Riley, as they are always talking to her in these scenes. Like, trust me, if people are actually talking to you at all, they probably